Yeah, we can travel, girl, without any means. When it's as easy as closing your eyes and dream Jamaica is a big neon sign. Just think Jamaica in the moonlight, sandy beaches drinking rum every night. We got no money, mama, but we can go. Split the difference, go to Coconut Grove.
I fell in love with you when you walked in the door, looking like $1,000,000. Sure would like to know you more. I could sit the whole night through, never take my eyes off of you, dreaming about the things I'd like to do with you. I can see your body swaying, moving to the beat. I can almost hear you say, dig the motion, feel the heat. Let the rhythm sweep you off your feet. When the band is in the groove, when you feel my body move, wrap your arms around me, hold on tight. I don't wanna play some game, I'm a moth and you're the flame. Just wanna be with you tonight. I'd be delighted if you save me just one dance, so I can try my luck and gamble on some new romance. All you gotta do is take a chance. When the band is in the groove, when you feel my body move, wrap your arms around me, hold on tight. I don't wanna play some game, I'm a moth and you're the flame. Just wanna be with you tonight. You and I could fly so high if
You're asking me to say, living life without you, girl, he's all
Remembering it used to be so right. If you're asking for the truth, I'd have to say I won't believe it's good night. So before you turn and walk away, just let me love you one more time. Feel your heartbeat close to mine. Lady, love me all the time. Lady, love me. So before you turn and walk away, just let me love you one more time. Feel your heartbeat close to mine. Lady, love me all the time. Love me, lady, all the time. Let me love you one more time. Hold me closer, now you're mine. Lady, love me one last time. Lady, love me. Oh, love me, lady. So before you turn and walk away, just let me love you one more time. Feel your heartbeat close to mine. Lady, love me one last time. Lady, love me. Let me love you one more time. Feel your heartbeat close to mine. Lady, love me all the time. Lady, love me. Let me love you one more time. Feel
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the regular meeting of Town Council, July 28th. At this time, we will do the Pledge of Allegiance. Lisa, can you lead us off?
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Can somebody run and grab the public comment sheet for me? One brief announcement. I did get an email from a town resident just requesting that town council members try to speak into their microphone a little bit better. Apparently when we turn our head, and I'm probably the one that's guilty of this, it's a little hard for people to hear me. So if everybody can just make a conscious effort to be talking into their microphone, we appreciate it. First item is public comment. It appears we don't have anybody on the sheet, but if you would like to speak before us, please make your way on up here and state your name and address for the record. You'll have 3 minutes.
Good evening. Jim Zeller, 210 Woodland Street, Glastonbury. First, let me clarify that while I'm a member of the Board of Finance, I speak only for myself. However, regarding item 5A on your agenda, please keep in mind that after substantial discussions for a couple of months, the Board of Ed recommended you seek more information than what you originally asked us to consider from the Board of Education by a vote of 4-1. I came before you in May when we were discussing how to ensure greater transparency in the Board of Ed budget, specifically its 2% non-lapsing fund. As we all know, this is where the Board of Ed puts surplus funds above and beyond what they've already spent before the end of each fiscal year. Your concerns are understandable since the millions in the 2% fund are the result of the Board of Ed substantially overestimating its needs each year. In the last few years, those funds have been used to bypass the Town Council's capital program budget process in order to construct a $1.7 million weight room, $2 million of turf fields, and pay $600,000 for Nullbuck upgrades that could have been reimbursed from the state had they been handled properly. Worse, the excess is never deducted from the next budget, but rather allowed to be used as the new baseline. That said, keep in mind the size of the 2% fund is only a symptom of the problem, not the underlying cause. The real problem is the state law denying the town council any input on the Board of Ed spending once their budget is approved. You can't change that, but you can demand the Board of Ed produce a more transparent budget document to facilitate maximum accountability so that millions of dollars are not set aside for the exclusive use of the Board of Ed while ignoring the many financial challenges the town council faces each year. The addition of a column showing that what the Board have approved for each of the 2 previous years, in addition to the one now showing what was actually spent, as the current document does, will enable the Board of Ed, the Board of Finance, and the Town Council, and any taxpayer to evaluate the accuracy of past estimates. The current budget denies anyone, including the Board of Ed and its staff, the ability to determine if even a single line in that budget was within 50% of what was estimated. Why should anyone have faith in past estimates if there's no way to measure them? You may wonder why the sample I gave you in May included a column titled Superintendent's Proposed Budget. I should have explained that better in May, so bear with me for a moment. In 2015, which was my last year on the Board of Ed, the budget contained the information I'm recommending and the Board of Finance is recommending be added again. It permitted the Board of Ed, the Board of Finance, and the Council to analyze all requests from the beginning of the budget process. Unfortunately, due to poor formatting by staff, the document proved confusing. So rather than work to improve it, the Board of Ed decided to go back to the old format after I left the Board of Ed. Setting that column aside, the document I gave you contained information the Board of Finance requested on multiple occasions over the last 10 years, which the Board of Education consistently refused to provide, despite clear language in the town chartering requiring that they do so. That's why I'm asking you, as the final budget authority, to require the information in future budgets. I believe you have two versions of my request before you. And while I very much appreciate our finance director's attempt to condense everything into one page, I suggest you disregard that one-page version as it's confusing. The two-page version showing a program across 2 pages is easy to follow, especially if each line is numbered on both pages. Concerns that 2-page format is confusing have little basis, and the fact that the Board of Ed could use the blank pages to provide the same information it now provides. Just to show that to you, let me just show you what the Board of Ed does now.
Jim, just to let you know, you're over 3 minutes, if you can just try to,
I'm about a minute, Corey. I mean, I'm almost,
try to.
I'm willing to meet anywhere, anytime.
None, do we have anyone on Zoom? Seeing none on Zoom, I'll give it to the public one more time. If anyone would like to come up and speak before us.
To do, to come up and present, and if our library board chair, library board. Yep, and so we're going to pass out colored, really nice, so.
For inviting us to make this presentation. I've been on the library board since 2018, and I have to say in the last 8 years, I have witnessed so many major transformations in our library. Has changed for the better. It's been lovely to see our library become such a premier place, even recognized by the Hartford Courant as the best library in the county. So, for many years, though, the library board has talked about creating an updated strategic plan. We realized that the whole nature of libraries was changing, and intelligent planning was needed to address what was going to happen in the future. But the timing was never right. We had the pandemic, the renovation project, changing library directors, budget issues, so we could never pull it off until the opportunity came up in the last year or so to start working on a plan with the help of 2 outstanding state library experts. And we encouraged Amy to jump, and she jumped right in, and she found some perfect staff to work on a planning committee. And I was very honored and happy to be part of that committee representing the board. It was a fabulous opportunity for me to get to know some of the librarians, discover how talented they are, and it also opened my eyes to how complicated it is to run a library. Who knew? It's not your grandmother's library anymore. So I was so impressed by the staff on the committee. They really took this work seriously. They were gently guided by Amy along the way, who encouraged this to be a truly collaborative process. And we put in countless hours in this project, so do not be deceived by the small size of the plan. It is backed by an enormous amount of research and analysis. And whether we want it or not, the future of the libraries, like many other institutions, is already rapidly changing because of technology. So developing some kind of plan seemed inevitable. We all realized the importance of having an intelligent, well-conceived plan to guide the library's work over the next 5 years. And Amy will explain the process. Our first mission, though, was to find out what the public wanted. So we worked on developing a questionnaire and an outline for community meetings, and that took many hours. And our plan was to make the final plan as representative of the community views as possible. So I've read many of the questionnaires, and I observed some community meetings, and I have to tell you, I was absolutely delighted to know how many people really love our library and have great hopes for it in the future. We heard from well over 500 people, and the overwhelming response was so positive. They said the library was a very welcoming place, comfortable, a place they loved to spend time in, browsing the shelves, attending programs, or just finding a place to sit and work or read. We knew the library was popular. I mean, the parking lot is always packed, but it was lovely to see it confirmed in writing. But we also knew we had to delve more deeply into what the issues could be that we could address. And what we learned is that what people wanted was really more. They wanted a wider variety of programs, easily accessible, more study places, study rooms, community spaces, expanded collections, and especially digital, and more opportunities for lifelong learning. I'll give you an example. The Children's Library, a favorite spot, as we all know, still has waiting lists for many of their programs, and often the programs are scheduled at times when working parents can't take advantage of them. So we knew that there were some issues that, and there was definitely room for improvement. Also, the public views the library as a major community hub. This is apparent from the questionnaire results. It was also not surprising that people are asking for even greater connections between the library and the community. Close relations between the library and local organizations and businesses that would take advantage of the many resources we have in this town. And through these connections and partnerships, the library would become an even more vibrant and exciting place. We also learned that despite the library's popularity, many people still don't know about the full range of services and programs the library offers. And these services, as we know, are constantly expanding. The library could reach so many more people if they had a better understanding of what is available right here in their own library. So one of the lessons we learned, and this was across the board, was the library needed to do a better job marketing and informing the public about these resources. And that's already begun, as you probably know from the new website. That's been so helpful. All of this data from the public was studied and analyzed every which way from Sunday. And the results are the plan that was developed that Amy will explain. The committee worked very hard to find a consensus about how to use all this information and what realistic goals could be set. And now I'm turning it over to Amy.
Thank you, Susan. Susan kind of addressed how we got here, so I'm just going to focus right on the plan. As we went through all of the data and all of the information that we gathered in all the ways we gathered it, we noticed a development of themes. We noticed that people talked a lot about the building itself and what they wanted it to be. People talked about the collections and the services that we had to offer. I will tell you, on every survey, from the ones that we gave to the little kids all the way to the senior citizens, everybody said books were still the number one priority, so it's our number one priority still too, don't worry. We saw a theme of programming and engagement and really trying to figure out new ways to reach the public needs. They encouraged us to look outside our four walls and figure out new ways to work with Parks and Rec or to work with the senior center or to work with the schools to make sure that we're reaching the maximum number of people possible. We also recognize the connections that we are creating. But most importantly, we really are looking at how we're going to pay for all this. And I know that that's really on some of your minds. And so part of what we did when we were creating this plan was look at realistic goals that we can do with the resources we have now. So we put together the plan you see in front of you with the 5 themes. We created a series of objectives that we're going to reach towards, and then our work began creating a list of all of the tasks that we can complete in order to reach these goals and objectives. We have already started working on this project. We've already identified some easy wins that we can work toward. We've added an adult programming newsletter. We've increased our Second Century Fund studio hours to increase the ability for people to use the studio. We are adding new one-on-one technology help already because we saw that was a clear need and something that we could manage right off the bat. Strategically, we're also looking at how we're organizing our staff, what roles actually will support a modern library. We're changing the way we're organizing our departments, and we're looking sort of at that big picture of what is the next step in order to allow us to make the one after that. Just me pushing everybody forward. Instead, they're going to be pulling themselves forward. And so beginning tomorrow, we'll be working even more on moving everything along to continue the progress. You have it in front of you now. I know you just had 1 minute to look at it, but do you have any questions, or is there anything you would like me to fill in a little bit more detail before I step away?
Mary?
Just a comment, I'm not sure how we collected the surveys, but I noticed that almost all of the surveys were done by people 50 and over. It seems like that's not totally representative of the community who actually use the library. So I don't know, maybe in the future, if we can make sure that we're reaching out to all. I should say this is fantastic. It was just something that jumped out at me when I was.
It jumped out at
looking
us
through.
as well.
Yeah.
And we did use every channel that was available to us to talk about this survey, and it's a voluntary survey. So for the public, if they would like to have their voice heard at the library, we're listening, but we need them to fill out the survey. We had it in the Citizen, we had it on our website, we had it announced in various meetings across town. We sent it to every community partner we had. Like, we did everything we could to get people to share their opinions. It's just a matter of who answered.
Kurt?
Are there any plans for a display or such about the signing of the Declaration of Independence, the 250th anniversary, and in the out years, the ratification of the United States Constitution?
We don't have that specifically on the books as a thing that is planned. We have some limited display space. There's not as much as there used to be. But that is something that we could investigate if we had the opportunity to do so.
Please do.
Any other questions?
Susan, did you have a-
Just to piggyback on what Kurt said, Jim Hallis has written an excellent piece on Glastonbury's role in the Revolutionary War, and an invitation to him to present at the library, I think would be a nice thing to do.
I can pass that on to our programming team. We do have a series of events in honor of America's 250. There have been at least one program every month for adults, sometimes more than one, as well as several programs for teens and families. We have a reading program encouraging families to read together historic books. We have a Stars and Stamps program that we're inviting people to attend all of the 250 programs in Glastonbury and getting sort of credit for that, celebrating our history as well as America's history. So we do have a number of programs already in effect, but I will absolutely mention that as a possibility for our programming team.
Jen?
Hi, thank you for the presentation and the wonderful effort and the strategic plan. I know Susan and I had met many years ago about library strategic planning, and she had shown me some examples of other town library strategic plans, and I think this is like a really wonderful outcome. And actually what this not to compare us against other towns, but I think this is much better than the ones I had seen because it's really succinct and like public facing and digestible, and it's like not this like 70-page document that's impossible to really dig into. So it's great. I just took a brief glance. It looks really wonderful, and I just want to note how much value this library provides. So the library's budget is 1.2% of the overall town budget. And the amount of services and community spaces, the digital collections, and obviously the books, but there's just like tremendous value and I think return on investment for the community. And I think that what you mentioned about marketing is really important to continue to demonstrate that value. Like I feel like the library has been just like a really bustling place as I've seen it lately. So I know that people are aware, but I think especially some of the digital resources are maybe under-recognized, and people could maybe even I know people's budgets are tight right now, and I think there are certain subscriptions to online programming that certain households could cancel because of the library's resources, and certainly with ebooks and audiobooks and stuff. So I've been trying to learn more about that as things come up. So wonderful job and keep going. And I do have a question, which is related to the goal. So you have the set of strategic initiatives, and you clearly track a lot of metrics. And I was just wondering if you have a set of sort of key KPIs or like a few sort of like the most important metrics that you would want to be tracking over the course of the 5 years. And I know they might not all be quantitative, but what are you looking like? What would indicate success, if you've thought about that?
Sure. Yep, that is absolutely something that we were thinking about when we were creating our goals, because we wanted to make them measurable and meaningful and, all of the sort of best practices when it comes to goals. So we do already track and will continue to track, and I'm hoping to see improvements on, things like foot traffic, program attendance, number of programs offered, obviously circulation, that's something we always want to maintain. But also some of the sort of the stories behind some of this. We've had some great stories about people who've used our resources to get jobs or to build their skill set so that they were more employable. So collecting those stories as well on a sort of soft goal side of things. We also are working on starting some sort of longevity programs, like 1,000 Books Before Kindergarten, for instance, to try and build up ownership right from birth. And so people really just start loving their library when they're born and keep going all the way through. So those are probably our major ones, but I'm a big number counter, so I will metric the heck out of everything, and we'll definitely be able to see on paper which things have improved.
Any other questions?
I just want to say that the library board unanimously approved, we reviewed and approved the plan, and we have 100% confidence that this is going to be carried out. We have confidence because Amy has been doing such a great job already, but also when I observed how she directed and helped move along the whole planning process. And we are asking that the town council as well find that this is a very worthy document, and it should be the source of a lot of good direction for the library in the next 5 years. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Amy, I think you guys do a fantastic job on down there. I've been down there a few times and seen you down there, and I'd agree. I think that the library is a huge asset to the town, and it looks beautiful, and you guys do a great job. Thank you very much. Next item is old business, discussion and possible action regarding rental operations at the Glastonbury Boathouse and Riverfront Community Center. Jonathan?
So at the last council meeting, we provided up-to-date financial figures on the boathouse. We also separated out those numbers based on a focus on the second floor at the boathouse, our rental area, and tried to also show the expenses associated with that second floor. This took some estimating, but we did that. We also provided the history. Lisa and Kristen did that on the rentals and the goals that the town had in place when the boathouse was first constructed. And there was a number of questions that councilors asked about related to the RFP. There's a request for the RFP, so we put that together and included it in the packet. That's the RFP for the caterers. Also provided some information about the history of the caterers and some of the issues that we experienced with caterers in terms of just how we get a caterer, and also some of the requirements for the caterers to go through. We also provided the information that was requested about the Apple Fest revenue. So that's $3,450 that comes into the town, most recently for the last Apple Fest, in consideration of the boathouse essentially not being able to be utilized that weekend. And so we do have Lisa here with Kristen to answer any more questions that the council has or respond to any thoughts or ideas.
Questions from councilors?
We also have that before.
Tom?
Have you been able to uncover the history behind the first floor and how it is rented and used?
Sorry, can you remind? I can take that.
Was it? Sorry.
So yeah, I couldn't find anything what the arrangement was when the crew team took over the first floor. Couldn't find any documents what the arrangement was. My thoughts are, when I thought about it later, was just like Park and Rec uses the schools for camps and programs. There is no charge from the Board of Education back to us, and then we maintain the grounds. So my assumption is that was the same way it was set up, that we use their facilities, they use our facilities. But that's just my assumptions. Couldn't find anything in writing.
Okay.
There was fundraising done by Fogarty. You may recall when the building was being constructed.
I
But that
do.
was just for the construction.
But that was for the construction.
Right, not for ongoing maintenance.
So there's roughly, we were told, $30,000 of expenses that can be attached to the first floor, and offsetting that is how much income from the rental? Oh, I thought you could put boats, canoes, and
Yeah,
stuff
our
like that in there.
revenue that we
What's
bring
the
in the
revenue
town.
for the first floor?
Yep, hang on. So our boat storage rentals, last year we brought in $11,582. That's on that second spreadsheet. The boat launching fees, we brought in $8,620. And then the miscellaneous is when we work with LL Bean and Slipaway Tours, we brought in about $5,300.
So roughly 11,000
So-
against the 30,000.
Right, not
Okay.
including the boat launch fees and the outdoor
That's different,
activities. Yep.
right?
So yes,
All right, thank you.
you're welcome.
Any other questions?
So there's a, excuse me, there's some information on the slide here, excuse me, that Jonathan had asked me to just explain the process for approving caterers that we have at the RCC, because the RCC is, the boathouse is a multi-year contract. The RCC is a rolling application process, and part of the reason that, we didn't want to do the RCC model at the boathouse is because of the challenges that we experienced there. So the process, as you can see outlined here, this is for both the RCC and for if somebody does ask to use an outside caterer at the boathouse. We do make exceptions for a $500 fee for someone to use an outside caterer, but we always first encourage them to use our contracted caterers, as we do have contracts in place and procedure. Health inspection reports from the town where they are licensed in is something that's where we get into issues with the health department, getting held up in the health department. It goes to our health director. If she's out, if she's out of the office, that can hold it up. She may want to reach out to the health department that they're licensed with to ask for further clarification. This one, for example, is in Weymouth, Massachusetts. It's not even a Connecticut company. People are, just looking to use someone that they know, sometimes a buddy who's going to give them a good deal, and it's not necessarily someone who's going to do a good job. Last two health inspection reports, a $500 refundable security deposit. If they want to stay on our list at the RCC, they do have to keep that on file with us. We don't give it back at the end. They leave it on file with us. A lot of caterers, don't want to pay that $500 out of their pocket. And I want to emphasize that the RCC, we only have, even though it is a rolling application process, we only have 6 caterers, I think, on the list right now for food service, 2 that do alcohol service. So we don't get a ton of applicants as it is. And then there's an annual fee to be added to the RCC list, $300. So that's on the list that we put on our website, saying that this caterer has already been approved, so it makes it a little easier. And then for alcohol service, there's another set of forms that are required. They have to have, obviously, a state of Connecticut caterer liquor license, not out of state. We do get people asking about, New York caterers. It does have to be a state of Connecticut caterer liquor license specific to catering operations. You can't have someone with like a liquor store cater your event. Liquor liability insurance, obviously, protects the town. It names the town additional insured and tips certified bartenders. There's no self-service alcohol in either venue. They do have to hire a caterer with license and insurance to do all of that. These are all the steps. It is, it is a lot that we're asking. A lot of catering companies are small operations. They're, it's one owner trying to do everything themselves. They might not even, have the time to get all this paperwork together or want to do this or want to pay, the $500 security deposit that we require. So, we've discussed, possibly changing the catering arrangement at the boathouse, making it more of a rolling application process like the RCC, or adding more caterers. I just want to emphasize that it's not going to change this process. We have many requirements in place for a reason, and that's what they are.
I would like to speak to Councilor Galata's question. We have been going through the minutes from circa 2012. There was a commitment made, according to the minutes, by Friends of Glastonbury Rowing. It does appear that some donation was received, but it is not clear how much, so we're still digging into the financials on that.
Roughly $250,000.
That was,
Yeah.
it appears that was the commitment. I don't, however, have clear indication as to what was received. It could have been that, I'm not sure, and that's what we're researching.
Kurt?
Yeah, getting back to that issue of the first floor, is the crew team part of a Parks and Rec program or Board of Education program or a
That's-
private program?
So it's, their team participates for the Board of Education, but the Friends of Glastonbury Rowing, Fogre, is like their own thing. That's where they do the fundraising, things like that. But it's under the auspices of Board of Education. It's not town or Parks and Recreation. They give us the schedule, so when Kristen's booking a wedding or an event, that we know when the regattas are going to be, and when there's an ergathon, and when the practices are going to be, and she has to communicate with the athletic director to say, you need to be off the water at 5:30, we have an outdoor wedding, so there's constant communication with that.
Would you be willing to reach out to your predecessor to see if there was an arrangement
Sure.
for
I can reach out to Ray.
subsequent to what was just discussed?
Sure
'Cause
thing.
Tom has brought this up several times, and I
Okay.
think he'd like to
I'll
get
reach
to the
out to-
bottom of what exactly occurred and if there's something that we can do going forward to offset the revenue loss. Thank you.
Will do.
Any other questions? Whit?
Just a statement, there's certainly something we could do to offset the revenue loss, and that would be to charge the Board of Ed for their crew use of the facility. But that would be something we'd have to talk about in the budget process.
Any other questions? Mary?
I just take issue with saying that this is a revenue loss when the boathouse was clearly partly intended to help with the crew team. So saying that it's a revenue loss when that was the intended purpose seems disingenuous. As far as making the Board of Ed pay for it, we're all one town. I don't know why we would be charging the Board of Ed for something that would then just go back to the town.
Any other questions or comments? I've got a question. So in our packet, you have the fiscal year 2023 to 2024 commissions for the boathouse rentals. Is there a reason that's the only year that is in here?
We had previously pulled, so it takes some time to make this statements because we don't, when we get commission checks from the caterers, it's one check for multiple events. So I went through manually previously and did that year. So that's why Jonathan had sent that to you, because he had access to that quickly, because I had previously compiled it.
So do we have records of the 2024 to 2025 and 2025 to 2026?
Yeah, but you had asked for it broken down by event, which is what takes more time. Jonathan had quick access to this.
Gotcha.
Yeah, we could work on that going forward. It's just going to take a little more time, as Kristen indicated.
Yeah, I mean, it would be nice to be able to kind of see that comparison. You had just talked about the rolling application process for the RCC, and you had considered changing that for the boathouse. Is there a reason why you haven't?
No, I didn't say we were, I said, I know some people have been considering that. I personally, I don't think that it makes sense, just because, like I said, it takes time for this whole process to happen. And in the end, often, either the health department doesn't want to approve them, or they will, reluctantly approve them because, especially with the boat, with the RCC, if it's someone who wants to be on our list for a year and they have horrid inspections, we're not going to do that. With the boathouse, there's more of an understanding that we need the revenue. And so, if it's a one-off thing, they may approve it, but then we have issues. This particular event, they allowed it because, the client was pretty insistent and, like I said, we need the revenue at the boathouse. But it was not a well-managed event in many aspects. The caterer didn't do any cleaning throughout the night. They did not manage the timeline appropriately. They would not clean up the food at the end of the night to end the event. The event ended up going over. They paid house cleaners to come in instead of doing the cleaning themselves. They paid like a house cleaner who my staff member couldn't even communicate with because they didn't speak English. So, it was just, it was not a well-managed event, and that tends to be the experience. Fortunately, at the RCC, we have custodians on site, which is why we have a little more flexibility. At the boathouse, we don't.
So You had just made the statement that we need the revenue. And I'm in agreement with you on that. Honestly, I think part of this discussion is about revenue and about building up revenue so it doesn't take additional taxpayer dollars. And, not to speak for Tom, but I think that's kind of what he's alluding to, is not having a higher tax burden. I think that looking at some of these, I already stated that I don't think that this is opinion. Whoever the renter is, they're the ones who bear the responsibility and liability. So even the $500 refundable security deposit, I don't understand why that would be going on a caterer. I mean, charge that to the customer.
Well, they're working in the kitchen, so, we have all commercial kitchen equipment, so we only allow authorized catering staff in the kitchen. And so they're primarily they're held responsible for whatever happens in the kitchen. So when they leave, when there's messes in the kitchen or damages, there could be fires in the kitchen, things like that. That goes against the caterer's security deposit and the caterer's insurance.
I understand that, but the caterers are hired by the person who rented from you. So it's like a subcontractor working for a person. You still require an insurance certificate from the renter. They're just subcontracting a portion of their event. So, I've been contemplating this. There's been talk about increasing the number of caterers. There's been discussion about whether or not there could be third-party cleaning services and stuff like that. There's been discussion about whether or not we should create a subcommittee to have a discussion about this. I don't think that that's necessarily a bad idea. I don't know what everyone else's thoughts are. I think that the more we can increase revenue on the boathouse, the less of a tax burden it is. And that's kind of where I stand. I'm just looking at it from a business standpoint.
I agree. I would love to see the revenue increase. I don't think that the catering piece is part of it. We've had a limited list of caterers at the boathouse the whole time, my whole time, 12 years, even when I've been here, and we had higher revenues in the past. It's always been a limited list of caterers. What I honestly hear more often is that people are overwhelmed by the choices and having to call multiple caterers, and they end up going with a place that's one-stop shopping. So I think if you wanted to make any drastic changes, my recommendation would be to reduce it and just go with one caterer and charge that caterer an exorbitant amount for getting all of our business. But then there are people who want a choice in caterers. So that's why we kind of ended up in the middle of having a limited list of caterers. We didn't want to just let everybody bring in their own caterer. We didn't want to just go with one caterer and eliminate choice. So we went with a list with an option to use an outside caterer for a fee.
I mean, you just brought up using one caterer and charging them, What about renting the entire facility to an outside group and having them handle all of the rentals?
So I can.
Yeah,
Yeah, so I know Jonathan and I have had discussions about that. And the thing is, it's still a very viable park. So if someone was to come in, one of my concerns would be that they're renting it out 7 days a week, and then you want to launch your boat, you want to use one of the nice pavilions, there's a ball game. We might just not be able to use the park, because if they're filling it 7 days a week, so that would be some of the concerns of, that was a concern that I had.
I think that's a pretty valid concern. I won't lie, but I also think that I guess there's debates that could occur. You could have off-site parking and have them shuttling people back and forth. I mean, I think there are options that could be worked out. And I'm not saying that that's the correct route to go by any means. I'm just
another reason that we didn't go with that model in the beginning is because like I said, we surveyed a lot of other venues, and venues that had an arrangement like that where they contracted everything to one caterer and they ended up running into issues with that caterer. It really causes problems because you've got events booked 1 year out, 2 years out that are tied to that caterer, and now you're having problems with that caterer. It makes it difficult to cut ties.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, as I said, I certainly don't think that model has been fully vetted. It was something that just occurred based off of your comment, so, but I think that something has to be done. truthfully. And, I think that an outside perspective might be what's needed. So I think that creating a subcommittee to take a look at it in conjunction with town staff, I think would not be a bad idea, so it might offer some good insight and some good opinions may come out of it. So that's my two thoughts. I don't know what other counselors feel or if, Jen?
I just want to thank you guys for the hard work you do and keep it up. That's it.
Jen?
I also want to say thank you for the great job you do and keep it up. And I also think that I kind of mentioned this at our last discussion, just to get a kind of back of the envelope, just some estimates or calculations about what a different model could look like. And so I think I might want to more formally ask for that and see if, just, I don't know, with the town manager and all the information that you have access to look at, we have a really good idea of what the revenues are and what the pain points are with this model, but it would be great to see something comparable for a different model in which, maybe with different staffing, I know we would have to run the custodial. I know you said that was going to be exorbitant amount of cost, but I just would like to see what that actually looks like. So I don't know if you have any specific models in mind, or if you come up. I really don't know. If we set up a subcommittee, I don't think I want to be on it because I don't really have a knack for this. But I'm not against the subcommittee idea. I just don't think us, without any additional information, anyone on the subcommittee who is not staff, could really be that helpful. So I kind of want maybe want the numbers
if we move
first.
to a model like that, like you said, it's going to add costs to the expense line of the riverfront budget. So it's going to take even longer, I think, to see it even out. So, it's certainly worth a try, but it's going to take a while to see how it impacts the budget.
Yeah, but to Jen's point, I guess, you run different scenarios in business on what expenses and revenue you would expect from it, and you make decisions based off of that. If the revenue exceeds the additional expenses, then that's a good thing. If it doesn't, then obviously it's not. I guess, yeah, and I would agree, we don't have the information to make an educated decision right now. I don't think that this is something that can even be decided in another meeting or not, because I think that, I think it's something where multiple different options have to be kind of vetted out. And so that's where my thoughts on the subcommittee came into play, because I don't think vetting it all out here, meeting after meeting after meeting, is appropriate. If a subcommittee spends a couple of meetings asking questions, running different models, and then comes to the full council with information, I think then the council can make a good educated decision for the taxpayer. So,
I have no problem with the subcommittee concept. Would you like to be on it?
Sure. I'm happy to be on it. And I don't know how many members, I would expect at least 2 members from town council, and, they can work with Jonathan and staff to kind of vet different options.
I think it's a good idea. It's worth looking at anyway. This may very well be the best approach, but we should at least vet what other alternatives may be. So do you need a motion to set up a subcommittee?
Sure, if you're willing to make one.
I make a motion that we set up a subcommittee of at least one council member to work with town manager and staff to evaluate booking options at the Boathouse and Riverfront Community Center.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Second with Mary. Any discussion?
Yes.
Tom?
Instead of booking, how about funding?
Would you?
I think we're talking about something fairly specific here. Booking includes funding, and it also includes how you do it. Revenue and expenses through the operations of the boathouse second floor, if you want to call it that, but I think it's all combined. So whatever's clearest. I don't think we want to open it up to funding for the entire Riverfront Park or for the entire boathouse.
Talking about the entire riverfront park.
Right.
Discussion focuses on a building.
Yeah, I'm not even thinking we want to focus on the building. I think we should keep this limited to focusing just on the rental process for the second floor of the boathouse.
Mary?
I'd be happy to join the subcommittee too.
Any other discussion, or?
Just might I suggest that an actual number be applied? You said at least one, but a definite number, and if people want to, if the council is comfortable tonight actually making the appointments, that'd be helpful if we start getting a subcommittee planning going.
Friendly amendment, we've had 2 people volunteer. I say we make it 2 people from the council.
We've got a friendly amendment. Do I have a second?
Friendly second.
Friendly second. Okay. Any, all in favor of the friendly amendment? Yep. All in favor of the friendly amendment, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None? Okay, so the friendly amendment passes. Tom, you were an aye. 1, 2, 3. How many do we have? We have 6. We have 7 people here? Larry's not on, is he? Larry?
I'm here.
Are you a aye or a nay?
Aye.
Aye, so 8. 8-0. Any discussion on the amended motion? Jen?
I think, I know the answer to this, but typically, I think if we're looking at the boathouse rentals, it's kind of part of the broader, riverfront park landscape. And so in that sense, I wonder if just like inviting a member of the rec commission would be helpful, or if that would not be necessary or helpful. Just because I think they've been, engaged in, relevant discussions.
So I know just the Rec Commission, their advisory to Parks and Recreation budget, not Senior and Social Services or the Riverfront or the Boathouse Park budget. So I didn't know if that's something with their marching orders, if that's an issue or not.
Seems like maybe that's too far afield, and that's fine. Just keep it up as is.
Hate to interfere again. Might I suggest you just amend the motion to include the names of the counselors?
Mm-hmm. So, friendly amendment to include me and Mary. Do I have a second? Second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? So that, Larry, you're an aye, I'm assuming?
Aye.
Aye, so 8-0.
I don't think friendlies need a vote to begin with, just no disagreement.
Okay, so, any other discussion? We good to go? Okay, all in
Yes,
favor
please.
of the
Yeah.
amended motion, say aye.
I do have discussion.
Aye. Opposed? Seeing none? Oh, 1, so 7-1, Kurt being the nay. Thank you.
Thank you.
The next item, new business, discussion possible action requesting financial reporting from the Board of Education. Jonathan?
So at the May 12th council meeting, there was discussion about the Board of Education's non-lapsing fund, and then that kind of morphed into a discussion about financial reporting overall at the Board of Ed's budget. And there was a motion presented to the council that night that I believe the counselors had worked on, or at least one. And so that was a motion that clarified what the request would be of the Board of Ed in terms of year-end fiscal transparency reporting, and that reporting would be given, have been given to the council and the Board of Finance around mid-October. And after reviewing that motion, the council decided that night to refer the matter to the Board of Finance. So the Board of Finance discussed this reporting at its May, June, and July meetings. And as a result of the last discussion, the Board of Finance voted to adopt the motion that was presented to the council back in May, but it also voted to add in some additional items. So what you have here tonight is 2 items before the council. There's the original motion, which went before the council in May, and there's a motion before you which includes not only that May motion, but also some additional language that the Board of Finance requested. So I'll take the time for the benefit of the public to explain just quickly what the option one is and option two. So the original motion that the council reviewed in May was to receive a summary of actual revenue received versus budgeted amounts, specifically highlighting any unanticipated funds. Also receive a list of expenditures funded by the unanticipated revenue identified, and also receive a list of any budget category that exceeded its original appropriation by 10% or $25,000, whichever is lower. And that motion did indicate that routine administrative transfers between accounts that do not increase the total bottom line of the BOE were not required for the report. And then again, the Board of Ed went ahead and tacked onto that several other things. It tacked on receiving reporting about approved budgets and actual expenditures for the past two completed fiscal years. It tacked on approved budget and the fall revised budget of the current fiscal year. That's a comparison. And also it tacked on the superintendent's proposed budget for the next coming year and the Board of Education approved budget for the proposed fiscal year, and percent change from the approved budget of the current fiscal year to the BOE approved budget for the proposed fiscal year. So that is what is before you tonight, and of course, Board of Finance member Zeller spoke to that earlier today.
Thank you, Jonathan. Do we want to open it up to discussion? We are 4 minutes away from public hearings. Tom?
Can I suggest a consensus? I'm anxious to go with option two, which is including the Board of Finance's requests. So if there are four other people who are also feeling that way, you'll know which one to put forward. I'm seeing heads nod.
Okay. Yep, okay. So do we have a pretty solid consensus? Okay, so Mary, can you read option two then?
Be it resolved that the Glastonbury Town Council hereby requests that the Glastonbury Board of Education provide an annual year-end fiscal transparency report to the council and the Board of Finance by the council's last meeting in October. This report shall include, but is not limited to, 1, a summary of all actual revenues received versus budget amounts, specifically highlighting any unanticipated funds, e.g. increases, state aid, tuition from other districts, significant donations, etc. 2, a list of expenditures funded by the unanticipated revenue identified in Section 1. 3, a list of any budget category that exceeded its original appropriation by 10% or $25,000, whichever is lower. Routine administrative transfers between accounts that do not increase the total bottom line of the Board of Education's budget are not required for this report. Be it further resolved that the Glastonbury Town Council hereby requests that the Glastonbury Board of Education include in the annual Board of Education approved budget materials presented to the Town Council and Board of Finance to be received no later than the annual town meeting, the below reporting on a per-program basis. 1, approved budgets and actual expenditures for the last 2 completed fiscal years. 2, approved budget and the fall revised budget for the current fiscal year. 3, superintendent's proposed budget and Board of Education approved budget for the proposed future fiscal year. 4, percentage from approved budget of the current fiscal year to the Board of Education approved budget for the proposed future fiscal year.
Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second with Tom. Thank you very much. Discussion. Larry already has his hand up, so we'll go with Larry first.
Thank you. One of the things I'm just concerned about with this particular motion, I'm all for the extra transparency. I'm there. When we pass our budget in March, what their budget looks like come September could be entirely different as far as everything that they need to move around, because they don't know their enrollment. They don't know and they've talked about it several times with us. They don't know the special education number of students, what's going to be outplaced, what's going to be coming in from links. I don't want to make this a gotcha moment. Oh, look, you've made all these changes, even though that's not what you budgeted. Because it's imprecise in March. Just like, I mean, we have enough problems with our own budget on the town side in March and trying to figure out what it's going to look like after everything is said and done. So I have my concerns about this. I'm going to vote in favor, but I do have some serious concerns about what this is going to try and be made into.
Thank you, Larry. It is 8 o'clock at this time, so we'll hold off on any additional discussion and the final vote until after the public hearings. Mary, can you read the motion for the first public hearing?
Be it resolved that the Glastonbury Town Council hereby approves an appropriation and transfers of $95,542.58.
Can't hear you, Mary.
Sorry.
Start over.
I think I had my thing on before and then turned it off. Be it resolved that the Glastonbury Town Council hereby approves an appropriation and transfer of $95,542.58 from the Capital Reserve Fund balance to the Capital Improvements Project Fund, traffic calming through the Safe Streets and Roads for All grant, as described in a report by the Director of Finance and Administrative Services dated July 24th, 2026, and as recommended by the Board of Finance.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second from Kurt. Jonathan?
So, as we've discussed, the federal government has given a Safe Streets for All grant to the town. We've completed that work. That work was used to prepare our plan that we will be using in the future to help us have safer streets. And we received $90,521.78 to date. We've also received word that our last reimbursement for $5,020.80 has been approved, so we're just awaiting the arrival of that. So the total amount that is available for transfer into the town's CIP fund is $95,542.58. And that is for traffic calming. And once this is, assuming it will be approved tonight, following the public hearing, then the town council will have $300,114.36 total to spend on traffic calming because there were other funds in that account. So Board of Finance has weighed in on this and approved it unanimously. And so tonight, this portion of the meeting is to deal with the transfer and appropriation. Later on in the evening, assuming the money is approved for transfer and appropriation, then the council will have an opportunity to decide on how the money will be spent.
Thank you, Jonathan. This is a public hearing, so if anyone would like to speak before us, we will open it up to public comment. Being a public hearing, you will have 5 minutes to speak instead of 3. Just please state your name and address for the record. I do not have anyone on the list, but if you would like to speak, please feel free to make your way up to the podium. Seeing none, anyone on Zoom? I don't see any public comment, written comment?
There are no written comments for this public hearing.
Yeah, okay. One further chance for anyone to come up? No, I will open it up to questions from counselors. Seeing none, this would be a point where further comment if the public would like to make based off of new information, but there isn't any. So at this time, I'm going to close the public hearing and open it up for counselor comments. Seeing none, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Larry, were you an yay?
I'm an aye.
Aye? Okay. So we're 8-0 on that one. Mary, can you read the motion for the second public hearing?
Be it resolved that the Glastonbury Town Council hereby amends Town Code, Chapter 18, Article 3, Tax Abatement for Farms, Section 18-31, Regulations Generally, as described in a report by the town manager dated July 24, 2026, and as recommended by the Policy and Ordinance Review Subcommittee with said amendment effective August 10th, 2026.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
Got a second with Kurt. Jonathan?
Yes, I'd just like to provide some background info on this. This ordinance change would allow the application deadline to be moved from May 15th to November 1st, which would be a benefit for the applicants because November 1st is already a deadline to submit other farm-related filings to the assessor's office. And in addition, the proposed ordinance change would make the assessor the entity that determines the award. That is done for all other abatements and other tax benefits. It currently says the council, so that's just streamlining things. So that is the amended ordinance overview.
Thank you. At this time, I'm going to open it up for public comment. If you would like to speak before us, please feel free to make your way on up. I don't have anyone on my list for this one either. Seeing none. Anyone on Zoom? Nope. Seeing none. Was there any written comment?
No written comment for this.
Okay, last chance from the public. Seeing none, I'm going to open it up to questions from counselors. Kurt?
Not a question, but just for the record, to reflect that Mr. Kavana has recused himself from this vote.
Thank you. Any other questions? Nope. Seeing none. Is there anyone that would like to make any public comment on the new information, mainly that Mr. Kavana has recused himself? Nope. Seeing none, I will close the public hearing at this point. The comments from counselors. Tom?
It's been a long time coming in terms of trying to help our local farmers, and this is a very, 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 did I say very small step? It's nothing really more than changing a date. But there've been a couple other things that we've ended up doing that I just wish the state of Connecticut would expand on doing, and even the federal government. But if Glastonbury is going to maintain any part of its heritage going forward, farming is a major part of that heritage.
Thank you, Tom. Any other comments? No? Seeing none. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
7-1, with Larry being a no. Oh,
No, I said aye.
Were you an aye? I'm sorry.
Yes, please.
8-0. Sorry, Larry.
7-0 because John.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Recused
7-0 with one recusal. We'll get there eventually. So, thank you. Mary, can you read the public hearing for number 3? Oh, there are 2. Jonathan, do you want to clarify on what the 2 different motions are?
Yeah, well, Shelley's going to speak to that. I just want to make sure if you could please promote Shelley and our Community Development Director and Francisco Gomes, who's our consultant from IMEG. And we have Mark Brantz here, our town attorney. The 3 of them have been working on this. And so Shelley, just want to make sure that you're able to come in clearly. If you could take it away, please.
This is Shelley Caltatroni, Director of the Community Development Office. And tonight we're here to open the public hearing for adoption of the draft zoning regulations. We plan to focus on the input that we've received over the past couple of weeks as we reviewed the draft with the Town Plan and Zoning Commission. And we'll review their specific recommendation with you tonight. Francisco Gomes, our consultant, is here to lead our discussion, and our town attorney, Mark Brantz, is also here to advise the council on any questions you have. And at this point, I do think we have a solid document that could be improved by some specific clarifications and clerical edits, but otherwise, I would like to recommend adoption of the draft regulations. We are expecting a robust discussion tonight, and I look forward to receiving your direction on the final draft and answering your questions. We have provided 2 draft motions for you. If you are leaning towards making a decision tonight, there is a draft approval motion for the draft regulations. However, I do understand this is a a large document. There's a lot to cover. We have a lot of public input we want to review with you. So if you decide that you would prefer to continue the item to your next meeting, we've prepared a draft motion for you to do that, and we'll come back next week and continue on. So with that, I'll turn it over to Francisco unless you have any questions on or direction as to how we should present tonight. Okay, Francisco, go ahead.
Okay. Thank you, Shelley. And for the record, Francisco Gomes with IMEG. It's good to be before you again this evening. I do have a brief presentation to provide some context for our work, and I hope it'll be beneficial to you. And part of my purpose in this presentation as well is providing information to the public that may be attending, and to better understand what this project is about and the process that we've gone through to get to this point. So that, with that being said, if you go to the next slide, Shelley, I'll walk us through my very brief agenda for the presentation. I'd like to start with our process and then very quickly move on to public comments we received that Shelley had mentioned that have been received through the TPZ public hearing process and through the course of our work over the last month or so. I'll briefly discuss TPZ's motions and their recommendation, the CROG findings, and some of the town attorney comments, who, as Shelley had mentioned, the town attorney's been involved with this process for a couple of months now. And next slide. So our process, as I believe you're all well aware, and as we discussed when we met with you a month or so ago, this is a two-phase process, and this work represents the completion of our phase one work. And the focus of the phase one work has really been to modernize the zoning regulations. In so doing, we've corrected errors, inconsistencies, omissions. We've improved the formatting and ease of use, and more importantly, we've amended the regulations to make them fully compliant with statute, including the most recent changes to statute enacted by Public Act 25-1. The town attorney's been involved in reviewing for best practices with respect to case law, and the zoning regulations have been amended to that effect. The next phase of this process is intended to explore more substantive issues surrounding changing land use policy, whether it be housing or economic development as related to your commercial industrial zones, environmental protection, signage regulations, outdoor lighting. We intend to take a more substantial dive on all of that content. And that process really deserves far more public engagement than the phase one process has afforded us. The phase one has always been intended to be technical in nature. It was expanded due to Public Act 25-1. We had to take a look at and consider housing in your commercial zones as required by the statutory changes. But outside of that, we've tried to very narrowly stay focused on providing corrections to the document, providing a document and a set of regulations that'll be much easier to administer and provide a solid foundation for our next phase of work. And next slide. So as you recall, we met with you on June 9th and provided you a more robust presentation of this process, and at which point it was referred to TPZ. We met with TPZ 3 times starting middle of June and a couple times this month. And we had very good discussions with TPZ, and through that process received a very considered public input, both in writing and in testimony at the public hearing. Based upon that input, we've discussed various comments with town attorney, and it provided some recommendations for how to proceed based upon the input that we've received. And next slide. So our public comments, I'd like to briefly go over the general theme of the comments that we've received. We've received comments from comments submitted by or provided in testimony from at least 10 individuals, with some of those comments signed on by many more persons signing on to letters submitted. So these are these bullet points I have here are really reflective of the themes that were provided through that set of comments, and those full comments have been, I believe, submitted as part of the package. And so I'll very briefly go over the themes that we heard from the community and what they're asking for and some of their concerns. And that starts with a desire for us not to classify or reclassify your planned commercial or planned employment zones to industrial as we have, because there is an interest in making those zones available for middle housing, as would otherwise occur through Public Act 25-1 for all commercial zones. As we classified them as industrial zones, we did not introduce a middle housing requirement in those zones because of their industrial basis, and I'll talk about that a little bit more. There's also an interest expressed to permit both multifamily and mixed-use development in all commercial or mixed-use zones. We focused on allowing mixed-use development only in most of your commercial zones. In the TCMU, we allow the middle housing in the form of multifamily. Public Act 25-1 requires that you allow either or both in your commercial and mixed-use zones, and we've opted with the mixed use, and I can talk about those reasons more at length, and if you have any questions about that, I'm happy to expand upon that. But that's where our focus has been, but regardless, there's interest from members of the community to allow both forms of housing in all of your commercial zones, to allow it to be either multifamily or mixed use or both. Furthermore, we've placed a one building limit on any middle housing required by Public Act 25-1. And the Public Act doesn't require more than one building, and so we've limited it to one building. And again, there's interesting comments about that one building limit and a desire for us to remove it or allow more buildings. Furthermore, there's a concern about our permit requirements for middle housing and our process for reviewing applications. We have prepared a set of regulations that's compliant with the Public Act, in that the Public Act does not allow for a special permit or a public hearing for the approval of any middle housing project, and it does not allow for any discretionary zoning actions. And the language that we've provided and the requirements that we've had put in place for middle housing is consistent with what is required now by statute. But regardless, there was interest in making that process even more streamlined, more administrative, and having less of that approved by TPZ, as I understand. Furthermore, there is a parking assessment option that is now provided for off-street parking requirements that allows an applicant to do their own parking assessment and produce essentially their own off-street parking requirement calculations instead of your minimum off-street parking requirements. That is required by the Public Act, that we allow an applicant to do that type of assessment. However, will require a licensed traffic engineer to conduct that assessment, which we think is fair and reasonable. And we had comments to the fact that we should not require a licensed traffic engineer. It should be, that assessment should be conducted by whomever may be qualified. Furthermore, we had some very specific comments regarding driveway standards for rear lots and with respect to frontage lots. And then we also had some very, very helpful technical feedback from Mr. Taff, a town resident, who's a former attorney for the Connecticut General Assembly, and is very thoughtful work. It is, I think, very helpful to our work. He provided some technical and grammatical recommendations that we're happy to incorporate for the most part into any set of zoning regulations that you may adopt as part of that adoption. So I'll walk you through how we intend to respond to these general sentiments and comments. And if we move to the next slide, I'll take you through it one by one. Regarding the reclassification of your planned employment and planned commercial zones, we have classified those as industrial zones, meaning we Within your regulations, we've maintained the name Planned Employment, Planned Commerce. However, we've grouped them with your industrial zone, and we've characterized them as industrial zones. We've provided purpose statements for those zones, which had been lacking. There was no purpose statement that made it clear that the purpose of those zones was to support employment, economic development, heavy commercial, and light industrial uses. So what we've done is we've clarified what we understand to be the original intention of those zones, which is to accommodate those uses that I just described. These zones are home to a lot of light industrial and heavy commercial uses, and are not home to uses like retail or restaurants or other services or amenity-based uses that are complementary to residential development. Additionally, these zones were originally zoned as planned industrial, and they were rebranded in a sense to try to make them more appealing to different types of corporate and office development. Given the history of these zones and the uses permitted, we felt it appropriate to characterize them more or less as they function as industrial zones, and in so doing, the implication of that is and was that they are not subject to the middle housing requirement of Public Act 25-1. So that our response to that is that we feel this was a reasonable measure. If we go to the next slide, I'd be happy to show you where these zones are and what they look like. So the planned employment zone is to the east of Route 2, top right corner. It's the teal color. And immediately below that is the brighter green color is your planned commerce zones. These are large lot zones that enable large facilities, large businesses, and they are proximate to some residential zones. They're right across from your town center. And they occupy a substantial area of land with very good access to Route 2. So strategically, they're very important for the town. And any decisions surrounding land use in these areas should be very well considered. If we go to the next slide, we did refer to your plan of conservation and development and what it recommends for these zones as we were making the decision to classify them as industrial. And what we find is there are a few very directly relevant references in the Planning Area 6 Employment Area section of the POCD. And there are three that specifically recommend land uses and suggest as to what the intended use of this zone is or should be. And starting with the zone, within the zone, you should continue to locate office, light manufacturing, warehouse, research, and corporate uses north of Hebron Ave, and locate heavier industrial and manufacturing uses south of Hebron Ave. Next is that you should continue to significantly and effectively buffer employment area land uses from adjoining residential development. So in that second bullet, it's clear that there's a concern about the compatibility of land uses in this area, in the planned commerce and planned employment zones, with residential development. And the third bullet suggests at residential development, but the scale of it is very different from middle housing. It says you should support multi-story senior living and care facilities. So we're really talking about assisted living and larger facilities. Multi-story obviously implies a fairly large scale development. And again, it references providing adequate buffering between adjacent residential districts. So there's a real concern expressed in the POCD about buffering of uses allowed in these zones from residential uses. And it's clear that this area is intended for the uses as it's described. Nowhere here is middle housing, single family, two family, or smaller scale housing identified as appropriate to this planning area through your POCD at least. And if we go to the next slide, the only reference that we did find directly relevant to housing in commercial zones is found in your townwide policy sections on housing, and it's item 2J. It does recommend housing in commercial zones, but it's very specific and prescriptive. It says continue to support residential opportunities and mixed use retail, commercial / residential developments where appropriate within the town center while maintaining a strong commercial base of the center. So what we've provided in these draft zoning regulations is compliant with the Public Act in that we are now allowing mixed-use development in your commercial zones, including the town center. And it's also, we find that approach is supported by your plan of conservation and development. And if we go to the next slide, the importance of looking to your plan of conservation and development for guidance is laid out in Connecticut General Statute, which it states that any zoning regulation adopted to that section of statute shall be made in accordance with a comprehensive plan and in consideration of the plan of conservation and development. So it's really incumbent upon us to look to the plan of conservation and development to conduct community engagement and adequate planning before making substantive policy changes that are not absolutely required by statute. And this has been the framework of our approach, and I hope it explains why we very narrowly crafted regulations to comply with the Public Act. And there's a little more to it. So if we keep going, I'll explain some of the rest, and I'll try to keep things moving quickly because I realize there's plenty to discuss this evening. On the subject of mixed use and middle housing in general, there was a considerable amount of urgency surrounding the Public Act, which signed into law right before Thanksgiving and became effective July 1, so less than a month ago. So we had to move quickly to respond to the Public Act. The first phase of our process did not include robust community engagement. Much of the work that we've done has been over the past 2 months, over the summer, where we find it challenging to do community engagement. And so for those reasons, we feel that looking to your POCD and it lacking the kind of guidance to direct us and support us in making more robust recommendations for housing in your commercial zones, and not having engaged in a robust community dialogue in the process as of yet, as is intended for phase 2. We feel that the changes that we've recommended to the zoning with respect to compliance with Public Act 25-1 is what we feel is justifiable given the lack of direction from the POCD and the lack of robust community engagement outside the public hearing process. And if we go to the next slide.
Mr. Chairman, for the record, Mark Brantz, could I just make one comment here? For the record, Mark Brantz, a town attorney. One thing I sense from this presentation, there may have been a misconception before the TPZ that I just want to clarify for anyone who's involved with this question of the reclassification of the industrial zones. The Public Act 25-1 does not make any distinction between industrial and non-industrial. It's not in the Act, okay? The Act says that you must allow middle housing or mixed use in zones that allow commercial uses. Commercial uses. We don't know right now what that means, right? But whether you call a zone industrial, corporate, whatever you call it, okay, the Act makes no mention of the zone's title or characterizations or whatever. So the idea that by reclassifying the names of these zones, you're somehow altering their availability for middle housing is just not correct, okay? We don't know, for example, whether a zone, our residential zones in Glastonbury allow commercial nurseries. They allow daycare centers. In fact, they have to allow daycare centers. Does that make them zones that permit commercial uses? We don't know. That's going to have to go through the courts or be clarified by the General Assembly. But those who think that renaming of the zones or reclassification of the zones makes a distinction as to their availability of middle housing, it doesn't. Some people seem to think it did.
Thank you, Mark. Francisco?
Yeah, and thank you for that clarification, Mark. I'd like to just back up a little bit and say that we made a decision to allow middle housing with the intention of complying in good faith with Public Act 25-1 in zones where appropriate and where we felt were supported by the Plan of Conservation and Development. That was really driving the decision we made with respect to those zones. With respect to planned employment and planned commerce, our classification of them as industrial is simply an attempt to better describe those zones, characterize those zones, and manage those zones appropriately and distinguish them from your other commercial zones. So while the two are related, the decision to not allow middle housing in those zones was really driven by the compatibility of middle housing with the uses in those zones and through our understanding of the POCD and its recommendations. Okay. All right, very briefly, I'll wrap up our response to comments here. There's concern about approval criteria of middle housing. Middle housing can allow for nothing more than a summary review, and we're satisfying that requirement through a site plan approval that does go before commission, but is not subject to a public hearing, does not require a special permit. Your zoning regulations also reference character. Throughout the regulations, we've reined that in somewhat in the Phase 2 process. Essentially, the Connecticut Public Act 2129 amended statutes to prohibit the use of character alone as a basis for denying an application. You have to point to clear and explicit physical standards. And so we've reinforced your regulations to provide much more detail and more clarity surrounding criteria used in making a decision. We do still use the term character. It is still functional for us. And, I think through the Phase 2 process, we'll dig into that a little bit, and maybe we won't need to lean on the concept of character. But the use of the word character is not prohibited. It's relying solely on a broad concept of character and denying an application that is prohibited. And I expect we'll explore this more in Phase 2, but I feel what we've prepared for you is consistent with what the legislature is asking us to do. And next slide. Finally, the parking needs assessment, I described this already. This is now a required option, and with emphasis on option for applicants. Because your parking requirement for any form of residential development, off-street parking requirement, is now 0 for any form of residential development with 16 or fewer units. You cannot require any spaces unless located within a conservation and traffic mitigation district. That's the name given to it by the legislature. We call it a parking management district within your regulations, but that's what it is. So we've proposed 2 parking management districts in the northwest corner of the town, covering town center area and adjacent to planned commerce and planned employment area, so that we can continue to require a minimum amount of off-street parking for any scale of residential development in those areas. Outside of those areas, which is 92% of the rest of your town, there is 0 parking requirement for any form of residential development with 16 or fewer units on one lot, and that's what's being required of the legislature. Applicants do have the option, as I described, of doing their own parking assessment, and while the Public Act does not require that be conducted by a professional engineer, we require it. And we require it to ensure that we get, the town receives a quality analysis that is dependable and is comparable from application to application. Again, the parking assessment is optional for any candidate. They don't have to, for any applicant, they do not have to exercise the parking assessment option. So they don't have to hire a professional engineer. They could just go with the minimum standards that are now provided through parking. And like I said, for 92% of the town, if it's 16 or fewer units, the parking requirement is 0 anyway. So we don't think that the professional engineer requirement is tremendous burden in any sense. And if we go to the next slide, we received some very specific recommendations regarding rear lots. And we do think there's probably some work that can be done to tighten this up, but because we'll explore potentially changing what is allowed or required of driveways for rear lots, we feel it's more appropriate to take on phase two. You've had the same regulations in place now for decades. And our draft essentially cleaned up the language to make it more clear as to what's required, but we haven't changed that requirement. And we received very good comments on that, very thoughtful, and we intend to take that up as part of our phase two work. And if we continue to the next slide, final slide on this. Again, as I said, we received comments from a town resident, Richard Taff, former attorney for the Connecticut General Assembly. And he had very thoughtful and constructive comments that he provided, several pages of very detailed comments surrounding primarily technical best practices for statutory language, or in our case, for your zoning regulations. And we're very happy to receive those and incorporate many of those editorial changes to the document. We don't think any substantive changes to what your regulations allow or require are necessary based on Mr. Taft's comments. Making these changes would just improve the quality of the document and the legal resilience of the document. We're happy to do so as part of the adoption of the document and providing the final edits to any document that is adopted.
Francisco,
And-
if I could just
Yeah.
make a note here. I wanted to let the council know, we did ask our town attorney, Mark Brandt, specifically to look through Mr. Taft's comments and tell us what our town attorney would recommend that we go ahead and incorporate. So Attorney Brandt has provided that to us today. I didn't want to submit it to the council without a description of what we asked the town attorney to do, but we'd like to provide that to the public and to the council, so you can see line by line what we would like to recommend as these specific edits. And that's one of the reasons that we thought you may consider continuing until this public hearing until August 4th, because that'll give you and the public a chance to review a very long document, because there are many of these edits. But to see precisely what we think should be incorporated. Sometimes it's adding a comma or a semicolon. These are kind of grammatical and clerical edits largely, or they are clarifying the legal intent of the language. So I just wanted to let you know that we have that document ready, and we would like to distribute that as early as tomorrow.
Thank you, Shelley. And that summarizes our response to comments received. I do have a little bit more content for you in concluding our presentation if we go on to the next slide. So very quickly, TPZ motion. So TPZ did provide comments for consideration as part of their positive recommendation. And the first of which was to prioritize the issues raised by the town attorney in their June 2nd memorandum in phase two. I do have a slide two slides that briefly summarize the town attorney's comments, and of course, he being with you, if he wants to speak to those himself, I'm happy to surrender the floor to him. Secondly, that you consider for incorporation the editorial comments submitted by Mr. Taft. Third, that you review the rear lot driveway criteria along with other development standards as part of the phase two process. Fourth, that you consider adding members of the public to the zoning update steering committee. And finally, 5 to 7 commissioners supported the proposed classification of the planned employment, planned commerce zones as industrial, and recommended prioritizing discussion of possible changes to those zones to accommodate housing as part of our phase two process. And it is very much our intention as a member of the planning team to fully explore both of those zones in our phase two process and have a very open discussion about the future of those zones, about the classification of the zones, the uses permitted in those zones, about housing in those zones, and potentially even about amending zoning boundaries or rezoning certain areas of those zones. I think it should all be on the table as part of our phase two process. Okay, and next slide. Very quickly, CROG findings. CROG provided a lengthy memo with some general guidance regarding the Public Act. I think the moral of the story is that the regulations that are before you are compliant with the Public Act, and that CROG found that these amendments will have no adverse impact on surrounding communities, and they are consistent with regional plans and policies. I think that's the key takeaway. They did provide some guidance and opinions on middle housing and parking. And I think these are all things for consideration as part of our phase 2 process. But what's critical at this point was that we essentially had a positive review from CROG. Okay, next. And town attorney comments. Mark, I don't know if you want to run with this or if you're comfortable with me just glossing over it, and you can go into more detail if you like.
I'm happy to have you go ahead, Francisco.
Okay. The town attorney provided on June 1st a memorandum summarizing their findings and recommendations from the draft regulations that are before you. And I'd like to break those recommendations up into 2 groups. There were 9 numbered items in total. And on this slide, I'd like to focus on those items that the town attorney recommends for consideration or amendment as part of this phase 1 adoption. And that includes special outdoor events and restoring the special permit requirement. Special outdoor events were formerly classified as carnivals, circuses, and other type of events. We've given it a broader category or a bigger bucket, and we're calling them special outdoor events, but essentially is what is currently allowed now, which currently requires a special permit. And through discussions with staff, we had concerns about requiring a special permit for any scale of outdoor event, such as a wedding for 100 or 200 people. What we landed on was a tiered approach. We removed the special permit requirements for special outdoor events. We instead provided a zoning permit requirement with Planning and Zoning Commission required for events with 500 or more expected people. We provide a basic site plan requirement. And so we've provided something that we think will be easier for the town to administer and will support the conduct of these events. But the town attorney has expressed an interest in restoring or maintaining, I should say, the special permit requirement, because the special permit requirement obviously gives the town far more control over these types of events. With respect to middle housing, which we are now allowing in all of your commercial zones, we've provided a minimal of design standards for middle housing. We've got some very basic open space requirements and some very minor standards regarding the design of middle housing outside of your basic bulk area height and setback type standards afforded through your zoning for any form of development. We have not gone further than what we've provided because we feel that this area is going to receive a lot of attention and work through phase 2, and that will afford us an opportunity to develop more prescriptive standards for middle housing. The town attorney does recommend taking on that discussion now. However, for motor vehicle repair, there's some ambiguity in your regulations surrounding where vehicles are allowed to be stored in what yard, and that has yet to be resolved. So we either need to make a decision to resolve that now or agree that it can wait to our next phase of work. Open space subdivisions, you have a common ownership provision that allows common ownership of any required open space by individual property owners. And the town attorney recommends eliminating that because that can be very challenging to regulate and to manage. And there are other issues that I'm sure you could speak in far more detail about what the concerns are there. ZBA minutes and findings, we have some language in there. We had removed it from your special permit minutes and findings requirements. So it's very clear that that should come out, and essentially that language requires you state the reasons for an action on any decision to be stated on record, that you require that reason to be stated on record, and there are very good reasons for not doing that. We identified that within your special permit requirements. That language remains in your ZBA minutes and findings, and I fully agree should be removed as part of our finalizing this document. So those are all the items that were identified as a high priority for phase one, or identified specifically for phase one. There were 4 other items, if we go to the next slide, that were identified as phase one or phase two consideration. First is non-conforming structures. The general practice has been to allow non-conforming structures to expand vertically, providing they're not non-conforming with height, of course. That was not codified in your regulations. Your regulations were vague about that. We've made it clear that that's what is permitted, as has the practice been. The question is whether or not you want to allow that, or it's a good idea to allow that. And so that should be something discussed and decisions made on that. It could potentially wait for a phase two process, since that's been a long-held practice. You may elect to take that up now as well. Inclusionary zoning. You do have an inclusionary zoning requirement of 14% for certain scales of residential development. The town attorney had some very creative ideas on how to increase the inclusionary housing requirement for developments that don't provide the amount of off-street parking that had otherwise been required. Again, the Public Act is essentially reducing off-street parking down to 0 in some areas. And even where we can continue to require it, the state is putting a cap on how much you can require. So the rationale here is that if a developer doesn't provide the quantity of off-street parking that you would otherwise require, they should take those savings, what otherwise would have been invested in off-street parking, and put it into the affordability of meeting a higher inclusionary housing requirement for that housing, which is a very creative solution. It's something that kind of came to our attention later in the process. We did not incorporate it in phase one. I think it's appropriate for discussion in phase two. If you felt it was a priority for this phase of work too, we're happy to take that up. Your village districts, you currently exempt single-family homes. You have a blanket exemption for single-family homes in your village districts, so they're not subject to any of your design guidelines. But that also means that they're not subject to any prohibition on demolition. Right? You do have a demolition delay ordinance in town. Through your village districts, though, you can outright prohibit demolitions. You can place very strict controls on demolitions that go well beyond a demolition delay ordinance. But because single-family homes are exempt in your village districts, they cannot be regulated in that way currently. And the concern here is, with the middle housing requirements now in place in your village districts covering some of your commercial zones, the concern is the demolition of multiple single-family homes being replaced with a larger middle housing development. So that is something to consider. Again, this could be taken up as part of a more robust discussion in phase two, but it's something that was brought to our attention. And then finally, changes to a site plan. There's more work that we could do to clarify the language surrounding what constitutes a significant change, as there's plenty of case law surrounding what you can and can't do, and some statutory controls on that as well that require public hearing for certain significant changes to any site plan associated with a special permit. We've cleaned up the language surrounding changes to site plans. We think we have something that's much better than what it was before, but that doesn't mean there isn't more work that could be done as attention is called to it by the town attorney. So with that being said, I'll pause and Mark, if you feel the need to correct me on anything I just said, I don't want to misrepresent your comments, please do so.
Thank you, Francisco. For the record, Mark Brands. No, I think that's an excellent summary. I think the one that I would emphasize is just the one with the special events. In our client towns, we have seen a lot of problems with these. 500 people, 7 days, 4 times. That's a lot. If phase 2 is supposed to be for substantive changes, I'm not sure why this changes in phase 1, because it's a major change. The difficulty you face is that if it's a ZEO permit, if it's a zoning enforcement officer permit, the ZEO has to approve it if it complies with the regulations. You can't say, well, you're parking in the wrong place, or your hours are too late, or none of that. If it complies with this text, it must be approved. And so I'm just cautioning you that's a substantive change in this text that probably would bear more examination than it seems to have gotten. Thank you.
And that concludes my presentation. I'm happy to receive any questions, and I'll surrender the floor back to the chair.
Thank you very much for Francisco. Given the Shelley's presentation and the town attorney's opinion being distributed tomorrow, I would personally recommend going with our second motion to continue this until the next meeting. I just want to kind of take a straw poll to see if everybody's on the same. Yep.
So I support that, but I would like to, I'm assuming we're definitely going to hear from the public and maybe have a chance for counselors to ask questions, additional questions, prior to continuing it to the next meeting.
No, I'm not in disagreement by any means. I do want to continue with the public comment and everything. I just wanted to get kind of a initial feel where we were going to go with tonight, I guess. So for the public's knowledge, we do have a motion in front of us that does continue the public hearing, not only from tonight, but to our following meeting, which is August 4th. So we're going to be opening up to public comment and stuff, but we will be continuing this as well. Do we want to read the motion first before opening it up to public comment, or do we want to wait until towards the end? Public comment? Okay. So at this time, I will open it up to public comment. This is a public hearing, so you will have 5 minutes to speak. When I call your name, please just come on up and state your name and address for the record. Our first name is Denise Weeks.
Good evening. Denise Weeks, 334 Hollister Way, West Glastonbury, Connecticut. As a member of the Friends of Housing, I support the recommendations regarding Phase 1 zoning provisions as they relate to housing and were presented to you in writing. In particular, I urge you to amend the Phase 1 zoning regulations to remove the planned employment and planned commercial zones from the definition of industrial zones. This appears to be another attempt to limit or hinder the development of housing options in town. Since the appearance of the first 830G development, we have seen the creation of village districts and the Architectural Design and Review Committee. We have opted out of, as of right, ADU provisions and aggressively sued to prevent Vessel from building on Krieger Lane directly across the street from what was a true industrial site, the tannery, now converted to housing. While the ASDRC and village districts can add design value to our commercial centers, they can create a barrier to the development of affordable housing, with the ASDRC requiring 7 or 8 meetings with developers and creating a need for them to retain costly attorneys familiar with our design requirements. This complicates the approval process, unduly increasing developer costs and lengthening the time it takes to get a shovel in the ground. If PE and P zones were originally considered industrial, That's fine, but this is a revision to our zoning, and we should be treating it as such. The reclassification of PE and PC zones to industrial is not required by PA 25 and would exclude middle and mixed middle housing from areas in town like Commerce Street and Krieger Lane, closing off yet another option for affordable housing. These are the Krieger Lane corridor. These are prime locations to offer housing for employees of commercial establishments in the area. And many small employer establishments moving into the area would benefit if workers and customers lived nearby. It's close to schools, a grocery store, and a bus line, but more importantly, that area is ripe for development and renewal. To exclude middle and mixed-use affordable housing from this area would be short-sighted, and in my view, a mistake for our community and our tax base. The Capital Region Council of Governments Guidance to Towns, titled Transit Community Middle Housing, makes the case for allowing middle housing in commercial and mixed-use zones like Krieger Lane and Commerce Street corridor. And I quote here, "Zones with high commercial vacancies and weak demand for office or retail may find that theoretically higher returns from commercial tenants are simply unattainable, and thus need to pivot to residential as an adaptive use. Developers may find that transit community middle housing is a natural fit and ultimately beneficial for both increasing housing choice and providing potential customers for commercial developments. Allowing transit community middle housing in these zones can be an opportunity to reinvigorate business activity and long-term viability of commercial development." End quote. In conclusion, I urge you to follow CROG's advice and amend Phase 1 zoning changes to remove PE and PC zones from the definition of industrial zones. Waiting until Phase 2 to make this change would create yet another obstacle to the development of affordable housing in town and, ironically, keep us from reaching the 10% target for affordable housing, which would actually prohibit future 830G developments in town. Thank you for your time and attention and your service.
Thank you, Denise. William Marute.
You have to pronounce it Merritt, or my wife will come after you.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Good evening, Chairman Turner and members of the Town Council. My name is William Merritt. I live at 264 Carriage Drive, and I'm a member of Glastonbury Friends of Housing. For the rest of my comments, I will refer to Glastonbury Friends of Housing as GFH. I have already submitted written testimony for the public hearing. So rather than repeat it, I'd like to focus on one broad point. But first, I want to thank everyone who has worked on this project, the town staff, the consultant, Planning and Zoning Commission, and now the Town Council. Revising decades of zoning regulations is a major undertaking, and I appreciate the time and the effort that has gone into it. The question before you, however, is not whether a great deal of work has been done. It clearly has. The question before you is whether these regulations can be improved before they are adopted. GFH believes that they can. If GFH believed that the draft regulations already struck the right balance, we would not have invested so much time participating in this process. We are here because we believe there are several important improvements that can and should be made before these regulations are adopted. Over the past several months, GFH has participated throughout this process. We've submitted written comments, spoken at public hearings, and offered specific recommendations, not simply criticism. Our goal has always been to help produce zoning regulations that better support Glastonbury's long-term housing and economic objectives. We know we've been heard. We saw our points up on the screen today. I understand the argument that any remaining issues can be addressed during Phase 2, perhaps through incremental changes, but there's no guarantee that these incremental changes will occur. or that they will occur soon enough to help the people who need them. Even if they do happen, they could be spread over many months or years. If the council concludes that improvements can reasonably be made today, I don't believe that the residents should have to wait for changes that might come later, gradually, or perhaps not at all. Older residents looking for housing that better meets their changing needs, young adults hoping to remain in the community where they grew up, workers seeking housing close to their jobs, and families struggling with rising housing costs all deserve action when action is reasonably possible. The recommendations submitted by GFH are targeted. They do not require starting over. They do not delay the overall project. They simply remove several provisions that we believe would unnecessarily make it harder to expand housing opportunities in the future. In a sense, this hearing represents a checkpoint. The Planning and Zoning Commission has completed its work. Now the responsibility rests with the Town Council. You are not merely being asked to confirm what has already been recommended. You have the opportunity, and I would respectfully suggest the responsibility, to exercise your own independent judgment. If after considering GFH's recommendations, you conclude that some of them would strengthen the regulations, I ask that you incorporate those improvements now, rather than postponing them to phase 2. My request tonight is simple. Please give the recommendations submitted by GFH your careful consideration. If you find merit in them, I respectfully ask that you incorporate those improvements into the regulations before you adopt them. In a nutshell, strike while the iron is hot. Thank you for your time, and thank you for your service to our community and the opportunity to speak this evening.
Thank you very much. Richard Taft.
Sorry to make you work. Good evening. I'm Richard Taff. I reside at 1 Chestnut Hill Terrace here in town. As the former speaker said, I know the steering committee put a lot of work into these draft regulations. I appreciate that. I think everyone in town appreciates the hard work. I only recently became aware of the regulations, unfortunately, and I started to read through them line by line. And you might ask, why would anyone ever do that? And that's because, as mentioned by Mr. Gomes and the Director of Community Development, I was a former attorney at the General Assembly where I staffed the Judiciary Committee. I wrote bills and amendments. But what we also did in that office was we reviewed the regulations of state agencies. And we reviewed them not for policy or substantive issues, but purely for technical issues. So that's what I was doing with these zoning regulations. I was going through it just looking for technical errors, inconsistencies, outdated language, such as there are references to federal agencies which have now been renamed. It talked about registered architects when they're actually licensed architects, licensed surveyors, not registered, those sort of issues. And so I was aware that the Planning and Zoning Commission had a meeting last week, so I prepared a document of my changes. Unfortunately, I'd only read half of the zoning regulations so far. And I admit some of the comments are perhaps nitpicky or minor, inconsequential, but I submitted it for what they're worth. And I'm sure the town attorney and the staff takes that into consideration. Some are good ideas, some are probably not good ideas. Some may reflect my misunderstanding of planning and zoning law. So I accept all that, but I just wanted to offer my comments for what they're worth. And one of the commissioners at the TPZ meeting at the end said that she appreciated what I had done and hoped that I would continue. And I'm here to tell you that I have continued to read the rest of the zoning regs and am willing to submit more comments, hopefully soon. If you're continuing the meeting, the hearing till next week, perhaps I can get some additional comments. And I will try to keep them brief and to the point. So I think that's all I have to say. I just thank the committee for their hard work. I appreciate it. I know it's a huge project to take those regulations and to reorganize them, reorder them. And in that process, I'm sure there are some mistakes that are made. Oh, and I should mention that A lot of the errors, technical inconsistencies that I came across actually date from the prior existing regulations. And I think that's because over the years, the regulations were added on, amended, different authors, different committee members, using different language. So there are a lot of inconsistencies in the regulations that I think hopefully can be cleared up before final adoption. So, thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Jeff.
Mr. Chairman, for the record, Mark Brands, I just want to indicate that the document that was referenced, it actually came in yesterday, but the formatting's messed up. But anyway, I went through each and every one of Mr. Taft's comments, and I'd say for 90% of them, I just put recommended. Because they're very constructive, they're very helpful. He did a very thorough job, and one of the things that's in that document that I know you haven't seen yet, he notes some of the sections he hasn't reviewed, and I hope he will. So I'm glad to hear that he's going to. They're excellent, excellent comments.
Thank you. David O'Connor.
David O'Connor, 1140 Main Street. Good evening. I appreciate the steering committee's effort in updating our zoning regulations and welcome the many positive changes. I have a few comments. Adherence to neighborhood character as a criterion for housing approvals has been removed in some sections but remained in others, including section 20.4.4 for special permits and section 21.1 for decisions by the Zoning Board of Appeals. This discretionary standard may be inconsistent with the state's increasing preference for objective zoning standards. Connecticut General Statute 8.2, Section D10, provides the character may not be used in special permit decisions unless it is tied to clear, explicit physical standards. I ask that the draft be amended to replace all discretionary character standards with objective physical standards. I'm also concerned about rezoning planned commercial and planned employment areas as industrial. While I understand the historical reasons discussed during the TPZ hearings, the change is unlikely to alter the actual use of these properties. PC and PE areas often contain large parcels, road frontage, utilities, and locations near services, making them well-suited for affordable, mixed-use, middle and multifamily housing. Reclassifying these areas as industrial could significantly reduce future housing opportunities. New 830G applications may be denied in industrial zones, and residential PADs would no longer be permitted there under Section 11.4B of the new draft. I therefore ask that the proposed industrial reclassification of PC and PE zones be removed. Sorry? I also ask that the council eliminate the requirement limiting each lot to one principal building. Existing standards, including minimum lot size, setbacks, and lot coverage, already prevent overdevelopment. Allowing more than one principal residential building while maintaining these safeguards would increase housing options, improve design flexibility, and better align with the innovative housing forms encouraged by state policy. Finally, the draft retains several provisions that continue to limit housing production, including restrictive ADU requirements, large minimum lot sizes, and density limits. Please confirm that both these retained provisions and the new substantive changes will be fully reviewed during the Phase 2 community engagement process. I recognize the urgency of adopting these regulations now that the July 1 deadline for implementing PA 25-1 has passed. At the last TPZ hearing, we were assured that other concerns raised during this process would receive further consideration in Phase 2. As the town's final decision-making body, I ask the council to provide the same assurance that there will be meaningful public participation and a genuine opportunity to amend these regulations based on that input. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. Rob Dakers.
Good evening, Chairman Turner, members of the Town Council. I'm Rob Dakers, 15 Trapero Circle, and I want to thank you for your time and consideration of our thoughts. Our community faces a scarcity of housing and a severe affordability problem, pressuring families, older residents, young people, essential workers, while shifting our property tax burden onto homeowners. Even Washington Democrats and Republicans can agree on one thing: there's a housing crisis. That same recognition and urgency, though, seems missing from the draft regulations. Instead, they rely on what are described as minimum level of compliance approaches to the modest and vital middle housing provisions in Public Act 25-1, with no certainty about when or whether these minimum approaches will be modified. It's already been 4 years since the middle housing was suggested in a strategy in the town's affordable housing plan. While local responses to PA 25-1's middle housing provisions vary across our region, a number of towns are going beyond minimal actions to the crisis now at hand. By voting to keep the draft regulations as they are, you'd be delaying multifamily middle housing and other options for up to another 2 years or longer, despite your ability to act now. Resident stories shared with members of the Glastonbury Friends of Housing suggest the types of impacts of deferring actions. These stories include a son telling about his 78-year-old father having to sell his Glastonbury house to fund care for his wife, followed by a year of looking for a middle-of-the-road rental in town, finally getting lucky happening upon a for rent sign. Middle housing would have been ideal for that gentleman, with his dream home, a small cottage with no stairs. However, the draft largely limits options only to harder-to-develop mixed-use middle housing. The one building limit adds constraints, likely stairs. A GSH graduate with spouse and child moved back to Glastonbury after many years in another state to work as a healthcare provider in town. They were fortunate to find a home in a development that allowed much smaller lots and homes than typically allowed by our regulations. Cottage cluster and other middle family housing configurations only if allowed, which they're not under these regulations, could enable similar smaller scale options. Glastonbury grandparents citing the joys of multi-generational living with their daughter, son-in-law, and grandchildren. Like ADUs, multifamily middle housing historically has enabled multi-generational living arrangements, again, severely constrained in this draft. The draft also seeks to block middle and other options by relabeling our PE and P zones as commercial zones as industrial, despite their sharing a large number of uses with other commercial zones. Significant amounts of their assessed property value are identified as commercial. It'd be even greater if adjacent areas carved out as residential and commercial were to be reflected. And according to my count, 81% of the assessed value in the PE district is commercial. I don't know how that's industrial. Throughout the process, we've been told, it's been stated that if the commercial zones were not redefined as industrial, middle housing would be required. If that's not the case, why are we doing this phase two redefinition now? In any event, the son of a friend of mine in town, however, young people returning from elsewhere for jobs with large manufacturers in nearby towns, or those opportunities that may exist here, need housing options, not an industrial designation foreclosing them. We've also experienced that housing can enhance sustainability and rejuvenation in changing economic during changing economic circumstances and times. Our recommended changes you've received are straightforward. Allow middle family housing in all of our commercial zones, not just mixed use. Eliminate the one building requirement. Remove the industrial label from the PE and PZ zones, and ensure approval criteria are clearly defined and not subjective. These changes would enable housing options now, not in a few more years, for residents already facing costs and limited choices. The good news, and I'll finish soon, the good news is that we're well positioned for these housing options. They must conform with zoning requirements such as setbacks, lot size, frontage, buffering, and appropriate, clear design standards, and can't be found to compromise public health or safety. Thank you, and I urge you to have the vision and the will to make the changes needed prior to adopting the regulations. Thank you.
Thank you, Rob. This is the end of my list, but if anyone else would like to come up and speak before us, please feel free to come on up at this time. Seeing none, I'll open it up to Zoom.
If anyone on Zoom would like to be a part of the public hearing, please raise your hand in the Zoom app. And while we wait for that, we had 5 comments come in via written comment. I don't see anybody on Zoom.
Thank you. Last chance for anyone to come up, speak before us. Okay, at this time, I'll open it up to questions from counselors. Tom?
Actually, it's going to be a dialogue with Attorney Brantz. So, Mark, help me with the concept of inclusionary zoning for PA-251. And apparently you're feeling that that ought to be included in this first phase, and we shouldn't push it off for a year, year and a half.
That's correct. And the reason for that is that PA 25-1 has taken effect. It's took effect on July 1st. And it's obviously a matter of policy for the council, as Attorney Roberts and I said in our memo. But our feeling is that if a developer is going to create housing with inadequate or at least with non-compliant parking, that saving should be passed on to the future occupant. And the way to do that is to say that if the parking requirements, which are set by statute anyway, so the statute sets what is the maximum you can require. That's already there. It's been there. If they're going to provide less than that by virtue of 25-1, then there should be a higher percentage of affordable housing. It's that simple. There's one of the defects, in my opinion, with this act is that it doesn't require any deed-restricted affordable housing at all. It requires more housing, but market rate that the landlord can charge whatever they like. It seems to me that if you're going to give up parking, then you should be getting some affordable housing in exchange for it.
So if we were to move on that, and I would hope we would, in phase 1, what we would be doing is increasing the percentage of affordable housing, and under our rules, that would be affordable housing in perpetuity. So I think that's an excellent idea.
And just let me mention, we circulated to all of our client towns a model regulation to do this. We used as our template Glastonbury's inclusionary zoning reg, since our firm drafted it. It was the easiest to use, something we'd already drafted. So what we provided to you already has your language, just with that additional paragraph for housing that doesn't meet the parking requirements.
Well, you're more than welcome. Next issue, Mark, deals with, and I heard references made to it in terms of the public speaking about design guidelines, and that, quote, we have design guidelines. But is that true when we talk about PA-251?
It is not. In village centers, we believe that the town can still require ASDRC review and that the decision makers can be guided by that because the Public Act did not repeal or modify or limit 82J, which is the village district regulation. However, the summer review is very clear that the standards have to be explicit. And so we did provide you and all of our towns, and Marlborough adopted these a couple months ago. We have provided you with those kinds of very specific requirements on design that are non-discretionary and therefore comply with the statutes, but still apply. I did a presentation for CLEAR, Connecticut Land Use Education and Research, where I have a photo of two family houses in a nearby town. I won't say where it is. They're both two-family houses. They're both duplexes. One of them built maybe in the 30s, 2 front porches, a gable, very nice. Directly across the street, a shoebox, a box, no porch, no gable, no nothing. They're both two-family houses. So without specific requirements, someone could build either one.
Okay, so to understand you then, 92% of this town has no protection although references have been made this evening by the public that indeed there is protection through design guidelines.
Well, I think what I heard was protections in that there's setbacks and bulk requirements, which is correct. The statute does allow you to set height, setback, things like that. But in terms of landscaping, lighting, building design, no. And you can't. And it's correct that you can't use shall be appropriate to the neighborhood. None of that will fly. It has to be very specific.
Well, let me also suggest that maybe we take a good look at what Marlborough has passed.
The model we provided had blanks in it, and I know Marlborough has filled them in. Griswold's hearing opens next Tuesday, I think. Again, they're using that model. A number of our towns have already acted on it.
Okay, I'll stop for the moment.
Other questions? Whit?
Yeah, I'd like to follow up on Tom's question. The 25-1 talks about middle housing, is that correct?
Correct.
And middle housing is, I notice, is not defined in the ordinance under definitions. 9 units or less, is that what a middle housing is?
2 to 9 is middle housing.
And regarding the design standards, we would just have to add that to the ordinance?
It would have to be part of the regulation, yes.
That'd be part of the regulation. And then, Tom, what was your first point, your first question? Refresh my memory.
It essentially dealt with the whole issue of inclusionary zoning and being able to get affordable housing where right now middle housing and the Fair Housing Act requires no affordable housing.
Right, so if we're talking about middle housing and the state says you don't have to have any on-site parking, you think the states would allow us to require them to have low-cost housing as units without that parking? Is that?
The Public Act 25-1 did not limit 8.2I, which is the inclusionary zoning statute. 8.2J is village district, 8.2I is the inclusionary zoning. And again, this act is brand new. We have no judicial interpretation of it. I will say it was terribly drafted. I hope Mr. Taft wasn't involved in that one because it's just very poorly drafted. It had no public hearing. It was available, I think, 3 business days before it was voted on. So there's a lot of inconsistencies and ambiguities in it.
So I understand the concept then. So what we're going to say is that for every parking space that you don't afford on site, we would require an affordable unit.
No, the model that we provided to you simply says, if it complies with the zoning requirement, then it's your 14%. If it's less than that, it's blank percent, some higher number.
Okay, thank you.
Kurt?
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Burns.
Sure.
On your memo that was referenced on June 2nd, section 4.1, 4.2, 5.1, 5.2 with bazaars and festivals and whatnot, you recommend that be done in phase 2.
That's correct.
And how would we address that when we have a final vote? Just remove the language, remove the section?
What you would do is simply keep special events as special permit. You this is a policy matter for you, where if you think under 100 is okay by zoning permit, you could leave that. But remember, it's under 100 for up to 7 days, 4 times a year. You're not talking about a wedding. Weddings don't go for 7 days and they don't happen 4 times a year. All right, so if you're having a wedding in your backyard, you're not doing it for a week. All right? Your current reg is that any type of special event like this kind has a full public hearing before Planning and Zoning Commission. I think you should keep that. I think that provision has served you well. I've seen the reviews of things like the Apple Fest and the Art Show. They're very good reviews. They identify past problems, address them, fix them. Your TPZ has never denied an application for a festival or an event. They simply make sure that there's adequate parking and adequate sanitation and that what are the hours, how is alcohol being handled, all those things that you would expect to be reviewed. But as I've said before, staff cannot make those kinds of requirements unless they're in the regs, and they're not.
All right, so I agree with you that the review is very beneficial. Irish Fest, Apple Fest and whatnot. So we keep the current language? I'm not
I
clear
think-
on how to get to where you want to
Yeah,
go.
I think you'd have to change the definition of special event to use what we have today, something along that line, and continue it as special permit of P and Z.
All right, so can you work with staff before next week to do that?
We can provide you with language, but again, I don't know that that's where you want to go.
Okay.
You know, so we can, if you think that's something you'll want to consider, we can provide you
Very
with
good,
language. yes.
thank you.
Before I ask if any other counselors have questions, at this time, unfortunately, I have to leave, so I'm going to be turning the meeting over to the vice chair. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. All right, thank you. Any other questions from counselors?
If I could just follow up, is anyone not consistent with what the discussion I just had with Mr. Brantz regarding that section we discussed to have it changed?
Special permits.
Yeah, make it continue as a special permit.
Makes sense to me.
Are you all set?
Actually,
Yes, for the moment. Yeah.
right. Mark, so tell me if I'm right or wrong. Under 8-30G, the law specifically states that a 8-30G application can be denied in an industrial area.
That's correct.
Okay. Under PA-251, there is no such statement.
That's correct.
Okay. So to state that the intention of this subcommittee or the special committee or whatever the heck we called ourselves, changed planned employment and some of these other phrases just to industrial, prohibits or interferes with the ability of PA-251, the Fair Housing Act, from moving forward is not correct.
That is an accurate statement. The act doesn't reference industrial zones, period. It just doesn't.
Okay.
And what is an industrial zone for purposes of 830G is, as you know, the subject of pending litigation right now that will be returning shortly to Superior Court. But in terms of middle housing, the statement is that this town, every town has the option. You can require either mixed use or middle housing, or both, in any zone that allows commercial uses. Doesn't matter what you call it. The label of the zone is irrelevant. The grouping of the zone, the classification is irrelevant.
Okay, thank you.
Whit?
On that subject, I think, Mark, correct me if I'm wrong, the 830G statute says you don't necessarily have to allow a 830G project in an area with industrial uses.
Correct.
It does not say specifically it has to be an industrial zone. Is that correct?
That's correct.
That's what I thought.
Although I will tell you, at least three Superior Court judges have said that the name of the zone guides them. But it's not, the statute doesn't say it has to be called industrial or can't be called industrial. But several Superior Court judges have said, this has never been before the appellate court. The vessel case that the town's involved in was at the appellate court, was remanded as being not a final judgment. So we, as of this moment, no appellate court has ever opined as to what is or isn't an industrial zone that is not subject to 830G.
Right, so we have two zones, planned commerce and planned employment, which were created back in 2004 when we were basically saying the area to the south of Hebron Avenue was more industrial, therefore had different uses. The area to the north was more commercial, had different uses, and that's just why we separated them. We don't allow industrial uses to the north, in essence. So the only reason to change what we're proposing here is not to allow an 830G in the commercial area to the north. Is that really what we want to do? And let's be clear about, if that is indeed our purpose, that's why we're doing it.
To the north?
Yeah, the planned commerce to the north is the commercial district, less industrial. Actually, no industrial.
It's
The
not
area
no
to the
industrial.
south of Hebron Avenue is the industrial area that allows industrial uses. I'm just a little uncomfortable with what that proposal is.
Madam Chairman, the zone north of Hebron Avenue does allow warehouses and it does allow industrial-type uses. It's evolved as more of a corporate park, that's how it's
Yep.
developed. But that zone, I'm pretty certain, still allows warehousing, and I think there are at least one or two machine shops that I can think of that I think are still permitted
Attorney
uses.
Brantz is correct.
But you're right, it's
It-
become more of an office park in character.
And was zoned that way.
No, the zoning does allow for industrial uses, light industrial uses. The fact that we don't have any present is something to consider, but the zoning does allow for it. If somebody came in to propose by special permit, some of these light industrial uses, we could approve them through special permit.
Thank you, that's what I thought too.
Yeah. But the area to the south would allow heavier intensity industrial uses?
Yes, generally, we could provide, our zoning table allows you to compare the two, but we could provide a condensed summary of those uses so you could see the specific differences in the allowed industrial uses in each zone. The zoning table is, which you can find on pages 10 and 11 of the draft code, are quite long, but we could do a condensed version of it to kind of hone in on those industrial uses, if that would be helpful.
I was just looking at the permitted uses, I understand it. That's all.
Okay, any other questions? Just checking online if Councilor Nyland has anything.
I'm good, thank you.
Okay. I do have a number of questions, if I could jump in now. I was going to try to organize these, but instead I'll just take it from the top because I think there's a lot here. And I do just want to say, thank you to everyone who has been working on this, Francisco and his team, and Shelley, and the community development staff, and the subcommittee who's been working on this for a very long time, and Town Plan and Zoning Commission, and the residents who have been engaging on this. So I'll try to keep this as brief as possible, but I do also think this is a really important step. And I do think that the term checkpoint was appropriate, as used earlier, for town council as a, decision-making body and the ultimate zoning authority, to get this right. So I think we're like really 95 or 98% there. But I think it's really important to get that last 2% right. And I think we can do it in the next, this meeting and next meeting, hopefully. So the first question I had was actually about the village district, our current village district regulation, and this is one of the points from Attorney Brantz, for basically having like the possibility of somebody coming and demolishing a single family or duplex, and then coming in at, I guess with summary review for up to 9 units. But I wonder if, because our village district guidelines actually say that it applies to new construction, so I understand the demolition is its own issue, but if somebody comes in with new construction under the middle housing provision for summary review, wouldn't that then trigger the village district regulation?
I'm not clear on your question here.
So I think the example given, I don't know if it was in your memo, was like, so right now, our village district guidelines has this exemption for 1 and 2 family.
Correct.
And I think you were saying, but maybe you weren't saying this, is a developer could come in, buy up the house, knock it down, and then come in with under middle housing and have it be subject to only summary review?
That's correct.
So I'm just saying that, isn't that new construction? So wouldn't that trigger village district regulations?
The design of the building would.
Okay, gotcha.
But one of the reasons why village district controls demolition is because existing structures help to define the character of that village district.
Sure.
So if they're all, no matter how attractively done the new 2 to 9 unit building is, it still isn't exactly what was there before.
Okay, got it. Thank you for that clarification. I was just my brain wasn't working around that one. Okay, so on the inclusionary zoning, related to the parking minimum, I was following that, and you had said that you had circulated a model of regulation, and I just want to see if staff can pass that along to us, because I don't think I've seen that.
Yeah, we're happy to provide it.
Thank you. And then similarly for the model design guidelines for the summary review for middle housing, I would like to see those as well, because I think that is something that gave me pause in this current draft, which is I don't mind the ASDRC, having to take a look at this before it goes to TP&Z. They certainly have the expertise to make projects better, but right now they literally have nothing to go on from what I see in this draft. It doesn't even refer to our current design guidelines. If it's not in a village district, it's not bound by them. And I think that the professionals on ASDRC can definitely use their best judgment, but sometimes they may have conflicting opinions. And I think that process can slow down, which I personally think is our intention around removing barriers to developing middle housing. And so I do have that concern, and I do think we should quickly develop and look at and adopt these minimal design guidelines to be able to guide everyone and make the whole process more efficient for the applicant, for ASDRC members, for TP&Z to be able to interpret. So I guess maybe a question then is, could we see those before the next meeting on August 4th? And what's the process for putting those into place as quickly as possible?
My last night on ASDRC, I had mentioned that the committee should be looking at this topic. The problem is the model we've circulated has a lot of blanks in it. So you might want to take maybe Shelley can provide you with the Marlboro regs that were just adopted, just as a starting point. I can get you the Grizzled regs. I can get you both of them. And but I had hoped that the ASDRC would weigh in on this months ago, but we are where we are.
I have a question, Attorney Brantz. If the council were to pursue adding more design standards into this draft, would we need to recirculate this draft for public review? Would that be considered a substantial enough change? And I have a similar question on the inclusionary zoning change. Would those changes trigger the need to repost a draft and have it available for review for, I believe that it's a 10-day requirement for notice?
That is a concern that I have.
Yes. Okay.
The law is that the council, as the decision maker, can make modifications in response to public comments and points raised at the public hearing. But they're not supposed to add completely new material. Those two are new material, so it may be that you can't do it as part of this phase. There is the risk that would be a challenge. I mean, that's all I can tell you.
One thing to consider for the council is that you could consider adopting the current draft or some version of it with maybe the clerical corrections, non-substantial corrections, as sort of an interim. And then we could immediately come back in September with these more substantial changes. So we'd have a code to give us clear direction. In the meanwhile, especially for any applications that come in that would be affected by the Public Act, but then kind of accelerate our work on these very specific amendments and bring them back in September for action. Just something to consider, that it's not necessary if you don't feel the urgency to adopt this draft and have that interim draft adopted, then we could just bundle it all together and come back in September.
I think Tom had a response first.
I think we're basically saying the same thing, but I'll just use my words. I'm a little simpler. So we move forward on this. If we decide there's 5 folks to move forward on it, could we, Mark, include inclusionary zoning in this? Or is this too much of a significant change? That's a yes or a no, Guy.
A yes or a no? I
Good.
don't know.
Okay, so that, I'm going to take that as a no. The guidelines for design for PA-251 is a no.
That's a whole nother provision.
Right, well, it requires more work as opposed to moving something forward. With a special permit.
And by the way, even with regard to the inclusionary, the model we circulated just has a blank.
Oh, okay. With the special permit, that we could do.
I'm sorry?
With the issue around the special permit for events.
Yes.
That
yes.
we could do.
Well, you can do that for an easy reason.
Yeah.
It's a less of a change than what you advertised.
All right,
It's basically going back to what the reg is today.
So I think what I heard Shelley saying was move forward on those things you can move forward on. At the same time, there's nothing to stop us from incorporating into a new motion that the council wants to move forward on inclusionary zoning, wants to move forward on design review, or anything else, when you can find 5 votes to do it, and then just tell people to try and do this as soon as possible. Is that sort of what you're saying, Shelley?
Yes, I wouldn't categorize these as putting them into phase 2 because we wouldn't make them part of the community engagement plan. We would just continue rolling with a new public hearing on immediate amendments to address these 2 concerns.
Right, and on that,
yeah.
we're agreeing that it's not for phase 2. It's to be dealt with, but phase 1 is basically adopting the document, and then the improvements need to be done separately.
Yes, and the only advantage to taking this approach is that we get potentially get a code adopted, 4 to 6 weeks earlier, and there's less of this limbo phase where we don't have clear direction for any applicant who does come in with a middle housing application.
Yeah.
Whit, did you have something to add there? Okay. Not seeing any other hands, I'm just going to continue with my additional questions. So on this question of what I think of as the infamous or in PA 25-1, in which the statute says that cities and towns will allow transit, community middle housing, or mixed use. And I know that the subcommittee and Francisco has interpreted this, and staff, I think, has interpreted it, or as like you can allow one or the other. You don't have to allow both. But I think there's a debate about that actually you do have to allow both, and that the or actually means and, which I know doesn't make sense like on the surface. But I think when I read the statute and think about its intent, I do believe that it should be and that we should be allowing both mixed-use middle housing as well as regular old middle housing, the 2 to 9 units in commercial zones. And I guess I also look to Attorney Brantz for guidance on that, because I think all we have to go on right now is this wishy-washy, like how do we interpret it? But CROG did have a memo that some of the commenters referenced, and I have looked at it, and they do interpret it as and. But it does note CROG did not seek legal counsel. So I'm really curious about your advice to us, because this is not, so I don't see this as this is a substantive thing that should be addressed in phase 2. I do think this is an interpretation of statute that we should get right as much as possible now, so that we're very clear and that applicants are very clear and we're not somehow liable for a different interpretation.
I can tell you that there was legislation proposed in this last session to expressly amend the or to an and it failed. One of the rules of statutory construction is that if it ain't broke, you don't fix it. So if this General Assembly meant the or to mean and, then they wouldn't have introduced an amendment to make it say and. I attended a meeting of the Planning and Zoning section of the Bar Association about a month ago, and this very topic came up, this very question was asked. In fact, I have the sheet with me. And there were maybe, I don't know, 40 or 50 land use attorneys there, and the question was, do you think the or means and? And the unanimous, I mean, not one person there was willing to say that or means and. So we're in good company. We could be wrong, but typically when a statute says or, it means or. I don't know how, I know there are people who feel that the or means and, but I don't know how they get there. I don't know how you change the word that's printed on the page.
Okay, thank you, that's helpful. Okay, my next question is about the one building per lot in section 6.5, number C. So this is specifically around the middle housing, and it says building configuration, only one building per lot may contain residential units. So I still find this unnecessarily prescriptive, and wonder if we can simply omit number C. And when we last discussed this with Francisco here, you had said that it's not required by PA 25-1, but it's critical to limit the number of units to 9 so that a developer doesn't come in with, 5 buildings, each of them have 9 units, and there's like 45, suddenly there's 45 units. And so I certainly wouldn't want that either, certainly via summary review. So you said that we could place additional emphasis on the 9 units per lot. But I'll just note that that is already clear in number B, which says number of units, no fewer than 2 and no more than 9 dwelling units shall be permitted per lot. So I am just wondering if we can remove number C. It's something that I would certainly support, and I don't know if there's any legal or reason not to.
Legally, that's purely a matter of policy.
Okay, all right, thanks. So if it seems like it's a matter of policy, then yeah, I know where I'll be on this when we're ready to vote on it. And then on the inclusionary zoning, Attorney Brands, this is to address your question around increasing the required percentage of affordable units if they're not meeting our parking requirements. So in my mind, anytime we increase, we started our inclusionary zoning at 10% and only for apartments for 10 or more units, and then we revised it to now 14%, and it applies for both apartments and condos. And at the time, we carefully navigated around this percentage because we felt that going much higher than that would potentially go into the territory of incentivizing 8-30G developments, which give us even less regulatory control, perhaps. So I'm curious if you if the model regulation had considered that, or your thoughts on that?
It is a blank, but in the commentary, in the cover commentary, I've indicated exactly what you just said, Councilman. As we've generally recommended our towns to use no more than 20%. You want to go 24%, but as you get close to 30%, you're exactly right. Then the developer is just going to say, I won't bother with this, I'll just use 830G. So you need it to be below 30% and enough below 30% that there's still an incentive to use that vehicle rather than 830G. So I think you're right. I mean, you're now at 14%. I don't know what you would go to, but I agree with you. You can't come too close to 30%.
And in your model regs, did you recommend a minimum number of units?
No, I don't think so. Again, I think it's just blanks.
I think so. I struggle with this one because I think I did actually listen to most of the TPZ hearings, and I think Francisco had made a point around when you have smaller developments, especially in that middle housing range, 16 or fewer units, it could potentially disincentivize or just, the way I interpret it is it makes it less financially viable because you can't spread out that inclusionary hit on your profit, I guess, over more units. So it's makes more sense to try to do it for larger developments. So I guess that's something that we'll have to discuss and land on. I don't know if anyone else has opinions on this particular provision.
Let me just make one observation. You're right that if there are a larger number of units, you can spread those affordable units over a larger number of market units. I think what I'm responding to is that in, let's say, in an 830G, you still have to provide reasonable levels of parking. This act allows 0. Now, whether any developer would really do that is a different question. But, and certainly you have the option as you examine, you can say if you're in compliance, it's this, if you're 50%, you can grade it out if you want to. There's a lot of flexibility there to sort of try to match it.
Okay, great. Oh, wait, go ahead. Mhm.
Did you say that our inclusionary zoning only applies to 10 units or more? Right, so there's no
That's
requirement for any affordable units for 9, for middle housing as we're describing.
Yeah, but there was something about like 16 and fewer units?
Mark Branch, for the record, the parking is 16 and below. This is one of the confusing parts of this act. Some things are 2 to 9, and some things are 16 and below and 16 and above. It would have been so nice if they'd used one number, but they didn't. So if it's less than 16, there is no parking requirement, unless you can show a substantial health or safety impact by having less than the required parking. So
Okay.
you could do 16 units with 0 parking.
I promise I'm getting there, because I know we still have other business. Okay, character. I do want to ask Attorney Brantz about this, because this does get to, again, compliance with current law, and this was 21-29, which isn't even recent. I understand the discussion about, there's more work to be done, and I am saying that I think we need to try to do that work now, around eliminating any ambiguity in the use of the term character or eliminating it altogether, because I see like a few areas like 11.10.1 PAD criteria for approval, number J, preservation of the character of existing neighborhoods. 20.4.4 criteria for evaluating special permit application. Just several provisions talk about character, including the preservation of the character of the neighborhood. And then in the 21.1.8 ZBA criteria for decisions, the preservation of the character of the neighborhood. So it's repeated throughout our regulations, and it is specifically listed under criteria for approval or criteria for decisions. And I think contrary, I know this is like a nuance, but I don't think the statute says it's character alone. It just says that it can't be denied based on character, not character alone or character solely. So I would like to hear Attorney Brantz's comments on this and whether that will fly or whether we should try to make an attempt to remove those references or somehow define them.
What you're referring to are like special permit or variance decisions that are very high levels of discretion. So as one element to be considered, I think you're all right. I certainly, what you just said is absolutely accurate. You cannot deny an application just because you think it's out of character with the neighborhood. I mean, if that's your only reason, that's not going to be sustained.
I want you to, Mark, you need to go beyond that, though. A special permit is special. A PAD is special.
A PAD is a change of zone.
Exactly. So the point here is that the use of the word character with those, as I think you said, and I just want you to reemphasize it, is not a totally, what would I say, inappropriate word.
Correct.
Okay. I don't want you leaving the impression that because we have character in some parts of our language, that's a no-no.
Yeah,
When it deals with special permits, when it deals with PADs,
those are high discretion uses, and I read 8-2 as saying that you can't adopt a regulation that says that it's got to be in character the neighborhood is denied. I mean, and I don't think our current regs don't do that. I don't think these regs do that.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. I'm still uncomfortable with all of these references under conditions of consideration and evaluation and criteria, so I'll just leave it at that. I think that might be everything. And if not, I'm sure I'll come back later. Does anyone else have any other questions?
Given that we're we're going to continue this public hearing and we'll be discussing the issues again next week and Leslie's comments that relate to information that she, the next public hearing.
Wait, please put your mic on.
Yeah. Sorry, yeah, can you repeat that, and then, yeah, I think we'll go back.
And I'll even look towards the microphone. Given the fact that we're continuing the public hearing, I would suggest that we limit our future comments to any additional information we want for the next public hearing. And I also think it makes sense to consider what we have discussed regarding trying to pass as much as we can, as soon as we can, with the understanding that there are other issues that we'll try to get to just as quickly as possible.
I would agree with that. I'm hearing some suggestions that we do want to open back up to the public based on the information that and the questions that have been discussed now. So if anyone would like to come up and express any further questions, you're welcome to. Okay, go for it.
Rob Dakers, 15 Trefero Circle. I'm confused about something, which is not unusual, but I understand that the word industrial is really not in 25.1. And that maybe the label on top of a zone doesn't necessarily determine whether you need to do middle for housing. And so a lot of the documents I saw through the process says, we assume an industrial district doesn't have to have middle housing. That doesn't seem clear. And I'm just wondering, because there's a lot of commercial uses in both PE and PC. And so, I think right now they're probably considered commercial uses, but I don't know. So I guess my question is, that seems to be an area that needs to be clarified. I do worry about the economics of the 2 to 9 on parking. I think you could price them out. You could have units, it could be 4 units. And it might be totally appropriate not to have parking in that particular place. I don't know. And then you're going to kind of penalize them. I think you got to look at the economics of it. And for me, the and maybe, who knows, it may eventually get litigated, but from my perspective, and I think my colleagues, it's really the right thing to do. So at this point, which we're able to do, and I don't think there's any question that we can do it. And so I would encourage you to do and.
Before we go, can you just state your name and
Oh, I'm
address
sorry,
again for the record?
I did quickly. So
Okay.
Rob Dakers, 15 Trefero Circle. Sorry
Thanks.
about that.
Anyone else?
Madam Chairman, just one
Yes, please.
final word, two things, with respect to what Mr. Dacre said. He's right that which zones are zones that allow commercial uses is one of the ambiguities in the act that we really don't know. And that's something that is going to have to be clarified one way or the other. The only other thing I want to say before we adjourn is I've probably reviewed a couple of dozen comprehensive zoning reg reviews by planning consultants, and the job that Mr. Gomez did is one of the best that I have ever seen. This was very, I usually find tons of legal issues, and I found very few in this draft.
One more?
Just quickly, I thought Mark Brantz's presence this evening was incredibly useful, incredibly helpful. And if we're going to be meeting again to discuss this issue, and it appears as though we are, it would be my hope that you'd be occupying that seat the next time we meet.
I did reserve August 4th for Glastonbury.
Thank you. All right, based on that, any other questions from the public? Okay, so I think now we can put the motion on the table.
Be it resolved that the Glastonbury Town Council hereby continues to the Town Council meeting of August 4th, 2026, the public hearing concerning adoption of the draft Glastonbury zoning regulations dated June 3rd, 2026, and the associated parking management district maps.
Second.
All right, any discussion? I don't know, staff, please jump in if you have any advice for us or any other comments before we go ahead and do this.
If the council doesn't mind, just clarifying for the record what you would like staff to present or provide for you before the next meeting, and I can provide the list I have going, but if you could confirm that in your motion, that would be really helpful, clarity for us and for the public, I think. What I have listed is you would like to see our attorney's review of Mr. Taft's suggested edits, both those that were submitted to the Town Plan and Zoning Commission and those that were submitted to you tonight. You would like to see model regulations and maybe sample regulations of inclusionary zoning and design standards that could be adopted with this draft. And you would like to see, I believe, sample revised language for the outdoor event regulations that would require outdoor events to be approved through special permit process. Those are the three items that I noted to provide to you.
Anything else? Okay, so we will add those those requests to the motion as a friendly amendment, if that's okay. Okay, so all those in favor? Oh,
You got one question.
oh, sorry, one question.
I think we said that for several of those items, we would have to revise the ordinance to go back out to another public hearing. So I think we want that information, but it's not really part of this extension of the public hearing.
I think that's what she stated. She's going to have that information next time.
Right, but we're not going to add it to this motion to extend the public hearing. Because it's not relevant to extending the public hearing. That's something we'd have to do at a separate public hearing. If
Okay.
we take up those items.
Understood. So we will add the requests, the other two requests to this motion for extending the public hearing. And the other item will just, by consensus, agree that will be provided for further information.
With the exception of the special permit.
With the exception of the special permit. Okay. All right, I think we can vote now. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, great. 7-0. Okay, do we need a quick break, everyone? Like 5-minute break? Yeah, 5 minutes? 5, yeah, let's take 5. Yes. We extended it, or we continued it.
With the motion.
So it's not closed because it's still open. Yeah. All right, so I think we are back. And we are going to return to agenda item 5A, discussion and possible action to request financial reporting from the Board of Education. A motion is on the table, and Counselor Nyland had some comments, and I think he is all set. But I actually wonder if he could just briefly recap so that we can get back into it.
My questions were mostly concerned about, I don't want this to turn into a trap. I don't want this to, I'm concerned also, aside from that, I have no idea what this is going to bring on administratively. Like I said, I am in favor of asking for more information from them. And we also need to understand that this is going to be a request and that we cannot direct them. I would want to make sure that we don't go too over the top and say, ask for a lot more that is going to be too burdensome and then we get nothing. So.
Okay. Thank you. Other comments? I saw Mary, and then we'll go with what.
I'll just say that I'm in favor of the changes as recommended from the Board of Finance. That the idea that some of the stuff will change is totally reasonable. To me, I don't think that it's going to be a gotcha, but I think about at work, we regularly go back in and present budgets, and if something changes, we explain why. It's not a punitive thing, it's just a transparency thing.
Okay, Whit?
Yeah, I also agree that I think the Board of Finance recommendations make perfect sense, and I can't imagine that it's going to be a major issue for them to show actuals for the past 2 years and the proposed budgets which they've developed. So I don't see any issues whatsoever. I just want to make sure that when we receive the information that it's put out in a format that's easily and readily available and readable.
Kurt?
Thank you. I agree with what's been stated. I don't think it's a gotcha moment, and given the fact that we have a new superintendent, I think he's probably aware that there are some, how do I say this? There are some issues that he would probably like to resolve with the council, and this would be a good way to begin his tenure by just being as transparent with us as possible. So I think it's a great idea.
Any other comments? I will just say for my part that I will support this motion. I do think that the asks are not unreasonable. I think the data should hopefully all be available. It definitely seemed, some of it was already available to the public, just in different places. And I don't know, as somebody, I like spreadsheets, and I feel like it's just reorganizing columns. But, I think if there is some undue administrative burden, we will learn that. But I personally think that this is very reasonable to request and would just make analysis of the budgets much more straightforward for the council, the Board of Finance, and the public, and as well as the Board of Ed themselves, hopefully. So with that, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. None opposed, I believe.
Aye, I'm an aye.
Okay, great. So that's 7-0. All right, so we will move on to 5B, action on between department transfer, insurance, employee-related insurance to transfers out to insurance reserve fund. Mary, could you read the motion?
Be it resolved that the Glastonbury Town Council hereby approves a $320,061 transfer from insurance, employee-related insurance to transfer out to other funds, insurance reserve fund, as described in a report by the town manager dated July 24th, 2026, and as recommended by the Board of Finance.
Second.
Jonathan, do you have any comments about this?
Yes, I do. Last fiscal year, it was FY '26, it ended on June 30th. So at the outset of that fiscal year, we were We had been anticipating a big increase in our workers' compensation insurance for both the town and the Board of Ed. And in working with the town's broker, we separated out the policies that resulted in the Board of Ed paying about $480,000 more in premium costs than what was anticipated. Town saved a lot of money, about $320,000. And so because the Board of Ed did not have enough money in its budget to cover that $480,000 expense or increase in the expense, the insurance reserve fund was utilized. And so this is an opportunity to take the town's savings of $320,000 and add it back into that reserve so that in the future, if the school district or the town have a need to utilize that reserve fund, it will be well-funded.
Any comments? Questions? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, great, 7-0. All right, next one, action on between department transfer, town manager operating supplies, transfers out to capital improvement fund, Center Green renovations.
Be it resolved that the Glastonbury Town Council hereby approves a $65,000 transfer from Town Manager Operating Supplies to transfer out to Capital Improvement Fund Center Green renovations as described in a report by the Town Manager dated July 24th, 2026, and as recommended by the Board of Finance.
There is thank you. There's about $97,000 left in a CIP account for Center Green renovations. We've done the brick work fixing. We are going to do the irrigation and repairs in-house, but the biggest expense is one we're about to put out to bid, and that's for fountain repairs. And that $97,000 we don't think is going to cut it. So taking money, this is again from last year's budget, and transferring it into this CIP account is going to help ensure that we have enough money to get this done and get it done right.
Okay, discussion? Kurt?
Yeah, this is from last year's budget, not what the current budget we're in?
It is from last year's budget. It is still time. The books have not closed, will not close for another several weeks. So it's essentially taking money that's unspent and transferring it into the CIP account, which rolls over year to year.
So it's from the manager's account from the previous year, and you've not closed out the books yet?
Yes.
So you'll still have your $102,000 in personnel services in the current budget?
Yes, correct.
Okay, thank you.
All right, anyone else? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
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 Yeah, she did. Yeah, like immediately after I set the agenda. It's okay. So 7-0. Okay, so next one is discussion and possible action regarding the use of capital improvement funds for traffic calming.
Mr. Braun is available to answer any questions about this, but now that there is approximately $300,000 available to for the council to spend, there is a list of recommended actions that Steve has put forward, and that's based on conversations with the steering committee, the Safety Action Plan Steering Committee. So any questions, comments? I know there's been some, Councilor Galata has expressed concern about rumble strips on Keeney Street. So Steve, if you could please address that.
Yeah, good evening, everybody. Yeah, I'm happy to talk a little bit about the Keeney Street rumble strip. So what we're looking to do out on Keeney Street is really, it's focused on lane narrowing. So there's no edge lines for most of Keeney Street right now. So we're looking at installing some edge lines to stripe out 11-foot lanes. The new recommendations for roads like this are a wider edge line, so a 6-inch wide stripe, which is a little more visible. But then we're also considering the rumble strips, and those would be of the sinusoidal type, which is a different variety than you see on the highways. It's similar to what was installed recently out on Hebron Avenue, out between Eastern Boulevard and Manchester Road. If you've seen what that installation looks like or driven over it, you'll feel the sensation in your wheel But what that sinusoidal shape does for you is it doesn't create the same amount of noise coming from it. I did have some conversations with DOT about that installation. They said they haven't had any complaints about it. And it does abut some residential homes, although they did leave out some stretches that did have more dense residential along that stretch. So I think for our installation out on Keeney Street, what I would want to do is really focus on the centerline rumble strip in areas, I think for this installation, away from the residential homes for right now, as our first foray into this on a local road. So I would propose that we would run them from Hebron Avenue out to Howe Road, and then up north of Old Reservoir Road through the curves there. And the curves, I think, are really one of the focus areas that we want to target, just because that's where both of those fatalities were in the past decade. So I think that's really the area to focus the center line rumble strips. I did make some comments in the memorandum about the edge line rumble strips. I did a little more homework on those. And in fact, I don't think we have the road width, the pavement width necessary to support the edge line rumble strips. There's also some issues with potential conflicts with bikers that could be out there. And I also had a conversation with DOT, since they've been doing some of these projects on both local and state roads. And they have not been doing the edge line rumble strips anywhere other than on the freeways. So I think for right now, it's better that we steer clear of that part of this, and we go with the wide edge lines, and we go with the center line rumble strips within the limited areas that I've just discussed. So I think that hopefully that answers some of the questions about that proposal, but I'm happy to get into any more details or answer questions about the rumble strip piece.
Okay, John?
Thank you. I'm against the rumble strips in this area. The road's already narrow. One of the gentlemen that was here tonight, he didn't stay as late as I would have hoped, had reached out to me. He doesn't want them. I'm concerned about the noise near the MDC parcel that we own over there. And as far as the two fatals, I don't see how the rumble strips would have prevented those from happening at all. Just against them in that area of town. Thank you.
Let me just get Kurt, because I saw him earlier, and then I'll come to Mary.
Thank you. Very similar to John's comments, I've gotten several calls from residents on Keeney Street opposed to the rumble strips. And I did notice the gentleman that was here, but he came in after the public comment was closed. That's a resident of that street. And if I recall, that fatal accident, the vehicle was traveling toward Manchester and hit the telephone pole on the left or the right-hand side. So I don't know how a rumble strip would have affected that outcome either. When you talk about the width of the roadway, Mr. Braun, are you talking about narrowing it?
So
I didn't understand what you were talking about, the sideline and the middle line.
okay, so right now there's no edge lines striped on Keeney Street other than right out by Hebron Avenue. So one of the recommendations in the Road Safety Action Plan is to stripe an edge line and to stripe the lane relatively narrow. We've typically been going with 11 feet, and having a narrower lane focuses the driver and tends to lead toward slower speeds as people are trying to stay within that designated lane that's been given to them. So I'm not talking about actually losing any amount of pavement out there. It's really just how we designate that pavement with the edge lines, and that would be that white edge line.
And do you have any data for speeds in that area? Has the signs for people showing them their speed limit, similar to the one that's on Wickham Road currently? Any of those options have been out there lately?
Not that I'm aware of, but I mean, that's certainly something that could be done or maybe should be, as particularly through the curves, would be a good addition.
If we could put off on the rumble strips and do a little bit more investigating out that way, I would appreciate it.
Mary?
Sure.
I am actually for rumble strips on Keeney Avenue, and I will state you were correct that the mother from Hebron Avenue who hit the telephone pole, that would not have saved her. However, my coworker crossed over the center line and was hit by a dump truck, and it may have saved her. And while I understand that some residents around that area, we're already talking about not putting it in front of houses, may not want those. We are here to protect the residents of our town and their safety. And if that could have prevented my coworker from dying, I think that would be well worth it.
Whit?
Yeah, I also support trying these rumble strips in the non-residential section of that road. I can't see any reason why we wouldn't do it, particularly given the fact we're not doing it in front of the major residential areas.
Tom?
Did I understand you correctly when you said you wanted to do a rumble strip from Hebron Avenue down to Howe Road? Was that correct?
Yeah, I think that's a good area to do it. There's not any residential out for Hebron Avenue.
That's
I
not
think
true.
We'd have to look closely where it approaches Howe Road. I think there's a couple of homes right in that area.
Right, you've got Bob Howe's house that's right in front of that. And you've got another house on the opposite side of the street that you're talking about having a rumble strip.
So the state offered some good guidance on that, Counselor, suggesting that their studies have shown that these sinusoidal rumble strips are not much not much noise above ambient road noise levels, what you typically hear from a truck or a car coming down the road. But they've also used the guidance of trying to stay 100 feet away from residences. So I
Well,
think we could
If
look
you're going
at that
100 feet
section.
away
and-
from residences, you're going to be going from Hebron Avenue down a couple hundred feet and then stopping. There is a letter that we received this evening from one resident who talks about the problem. Resident expressed opposition to the rumble strip and said, really, the problem is one of speed and one of cars and motorcycles that don't seem to have mufflers. The problem with that, it's more than an S curve, sort of a snake curve, is that, how do I want to say this? If you enjoy driving a sports car, it is a lovely curve. However, if you're driving a sports car, most sports car drivers pay attention to the road. And if you don't pay attention to the road, and given all the distractions modern cars have, it's very easy to wander. And on a road that's as narrow as you're talking about, by the time you hear the rumble strip, it may be too late. I share Kurt's thoughts that perhaps this ought to be delayed to see more specific plans. You haven't been particularly specific this evening. You talked about Reservoir Road. There's houses beyond that that possibly would be impacted. Maybe you ought to drive down Keeney Street and see where the residences are from Hebron to Howe Road. I'm uncomfortable in terms of giving you a green light without a clearer knowledge of what your intention is. And I'll leave it at that.
Mary?
I find a lot of the comments tonight extremely insensitive. The person who died, who was my coworker, was going to a doctor's appointment. She was not racing down the street. And to say that the rumble strips wouldn't help, you don't know that. That may have been enough to jog her out of whatever may have been distracting her to get her to cross back over and not get hit by a dump truck.
Whit?
Can I suggest that we approve it with the understanding that the location will be shown to us and the locations will be approved? Because I do think that that section there where there are no houses clearly across MDC where there are turns of rumble strip could be very helpful. I can't think of any reason why you wouldn't do it. So I can understand your concern, Tom, about where is it going to be. But I think we can move forward with this with the understanding that it will come back to us with the exact location and that will be approved.
Larry?
Thank you. I agree with Whit on this, and also I would like to possibly do a field trip. Given have the opportunity to stand out on Hebron Avenue in that sidewalk area that we have there, and have someone a couple times give us a demonstration, drive over the sinusoidal rumble strips and let us actually hear it, because honestly, I know what it sounds like in my car. I don't know what it sounds like outside of my car. So if we're going to wait on that anyway, I don't think that would be the worst thing to do.
Thank you. Curious if that suggestion for is that a suggestion for staff to arrange a little demo?
I would be in favor of that if others would be.
Happy to arrange it.
I'm interested in that too. Yeah. Okay.
I would, on Whit's suggestion, I would rather see the plan first and then approve it as opposed to moving forward tonight.
Okay, I'm definitely hearing some concern about the final item in the memo. Just there's a number of other, we're going to come back to that, but there's a number of other items in the recommended traffic calming measures. Are there any other comments about those? Or are folks pretty comfortable with them?
Could I just offer a clarification on one of the items, which was the speed feedback signs? I haven't had a chance to really vet locations with the police department yet. I do think the road safety action plan was strong in recommending New London Turnpike in the town center as well as Griswold Street. But I would like to offer or have some flexibility, I think, in the final locations where those would end up. So I just wanted to offer that for the council's consideration.
Just to that comment, are there any concerns about sort of, Steve, with advice from police department to use his discretion on where those speed feedback signs should go?
As long as we're notified somehow.
Yeah, okay. So I wonder how to move forward. So we have not put the motion on the table. We could, and I guess we could, and then see if there are any proposed amendments. Should we do that? Yes.
Through the chair, so your last statement, Kurt, says, okay, yeah, all right, with the speed notification cameras, but we'd like to know about it. So I put in a location that you don't approve of. It's already in, so you'll know about the fact that you didn't think that was appropriate, as opposed to some decision that says, we want you to come forward with a plan that we can see, as opposed to a concept. I'm through the chair, I'm asking Kurt for a clarification on what you said.
Just to be made aware of where they are. Do you want to participate in where they go?
I'm asking you for
No.
what you were interested in.
I'm just interested in notification of where they're going. I don't want to know, I don't
Before
want,
they're going.
yeah, I don't want to be participating in where they go, just to be notified where they are proposed to go. Does that answer your question?
Just trying to understand.
Yep. While I have the floor.
Go for it.
Raised crosswalks, Mr. Braun, are they an issue when it comes to snow removal?
So those are going in around the state, Counselor, and I think other communities are figuring them out. I have broached it with my public works staff about plowing, and I think with the design of these, because they have a long entry and exit ramp to them, that the plows just have to adjust speed well enough to manage it. So I don't think they're going to be a problem, but that's part of what I want to do with this pilot project is really do a test case, use some of the best guidance we can find about the height and the design speed. West Hartford's done quite a few of them. And then get some feedback, both from the emergency responders who are going to have to manage their routes through there, as well as the public works staff after a winter, and just see how it went. And then we can make some judgments from there.
Yeah, West Hartford could have used your advice on their roundabout. Can you explain what a high visibility backing plates are, please?
Yes, sir. So on the traffic signals, what you'll see is a bright yellow border around the signal faces. And that brings the driver's attention to the signal indications. And so when Main Street was installed back in 2014, that signal system went in. We were just behind when that regulation went into effect. So we just missed it out there. But you'll see that, I want to say on Griswold House Harris, that one went in after that. So you'd see it there, as well as most newer signals. You'll see that bright yellow reflective border around the signals.
Thank you, Mr. Brown.
You're welcome.
Did you have anyone else? Questions, comments? All right, so I'm going to suggest that this motion be put on the floor, and we'll go from there.
Be it resolved that the Glastonbury Town Council hereby approves the amended traffic calming and safety improvements as described in a report by the Director of Engineering and Highways dated July 24th, 2026, as recommended by the Road Safety Action Plan Steering Committee, and be it further resolved that the town CIP account entitled Traffic Calming be utilized to bring said improvements to fruition.
Second.
Okay, Whit.
I'd like to make an amendment to the motion that the section regarding rumble strips will require that the town engineer come back with a plan for where the rumble strips will be located, and they must be approved by the full council before installation.
Okay. Would you like to explain further, or does anyone have any other questions or comments about that amendment? All right. All right, so all in favor of the amendment?
Aye.
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 Okay, that brings us back to the main motion. So any comments on the main motion as amended? Okay, I know we're trying to wrap up, but I just wanted to say, Steve, thank you, and to the members of the Road Safety Action Plan Steering Committee for diligently getting us to this point where we can spend some money. And I think the community has been asking for traffic calming. I think all of these measures are, proven, backed by evidence, and well thought out by our staff and the steering committee. So I'm excited to get this ball rolling. So all those in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, so 7-0. Thank you. Okay, I think we are now at consent calendar, but we don't have anything there. Town manager's report.
Given the hour, I will not provide verbal comment.
Thank you. All right, town council comments. John.
Just three quick things. Mr. Manager, if I can, just an update on when we forecast anything happening over at Doug Road. The water fountain that we just put in the back room here doesn't work.
I just gotta hit the button show you the button to turn it on.
And just an update on the animal shelter. I know it's only been like 4 years for us that we've been working on it, but for the dogs, there's like a multiplier. It's gotta be like 100, so I'd like to get something going with that. Thank you.
My town CIP report has an update on the animal shelter.
Okay.
That's it.
Oh, Kurt.
Thank you. Jonathan, on page 3 of the fire chief's report, he says there were 10 rescues, which included 4 outside rescues and 3 rescues within a structure. I'd like to know if those 3 rescues within a structure also included a structure fire at the time, or were they separate?
I will get back to you and the council on that.
And a couple of cleanup items. Whoever is the current owner of the old gallery restaurant next to the post office, if you could have someone reach out to them and have them trim back their grass, it looks pretty shady there. CVS on Main Street has several signs that are in the town's right-of-way that have nothing to do with CVS. If you would have some enforcement action on there, please. Thank you.
Okay, seeing no other comments, let's move on to committee reports. Chairman's report, I have no report. MDC, I think our representative is absent tonight. Krog,
Nothing.
and Board of Ed Facilities Committee is me, and I have nothing to report. We don't have any communications, so we're down to minutes. Go ahead, Mary.
Be it resolved that the Glastonbury Town Council hereby approves the minutes of July 14th, 2026 regular meeting.
Any comments? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
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 One abstention with, yep, and then, okay, appointments and resignations.
Be it resolved that the Glastonbury Town Council hereby accepts with regret the resignation of Jaume Rodriguez from the Insurance Advisory Committee U 2027.
Okay, all those in favor? Aye.
Can I suggest you combine all the rest?
Yeah, I think we can.
Sure. Yeah, they're all appointments. Be it resolved that the Glastonbury Town Council hereby approves the appointment of Ben Latner to the Public Buildings Commission D 2027. Be it resolved that the Glastonbury Town Council hereby approves the appointment of Didier Polgar to the Zoning Board of Appeals alternate D 2027. Be it resolved that the Glastonbury Town Council hereby approves the appointment of Stuart Beckett III to the Architectural and Site Design Review Committee 2030. Be it resolved that the Glastonbury Town Council hereby approves the appointment of Joseph Williams to the Architectural and Site Design Review Committee 2030.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, and then we are just going into executive session.
Be it resolved that the Glastonbury Town Council.
No need to go, we can wait until next week.
Okay, so we're not going to do that? Yeah, I mean, we are meeting
Okay,
next week.
motion to adjourn.
Motion to
please.
adjourn?
Aye.
All in
Aye.
favor? Aye. Thanks. All right, have a great evening.